Oh, yeah. It's a rainy day and I got company line. It's a rainy day, but you know where we're heading anyway. Even on stormy days, rainy days, thunderous days. Love those sunny days, but hey, it is autumn and I gotta be grateful, thankful. My rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, still one bill to pay, but probably gonna be late for my phone bill, but my rent's paid, never late on that rent. Beautiful flowers. I just love those flowers there. Encouraging all to work out, train, exercise, always marching to the mountain, to the river, round about the city, round about to the island. Marching east, marching west, marching north, marching south. For the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers, grocery store clerks, welders. Leaving late, 6:31 on the clock, so gonna go for a bit more than 4 hours. More than 4 hours yesterday, gonna add up to that 25 for the week. Always grateful, thankful. My rent is paid, electricity bill is paid, and that is that importance with that, you know, for the taking all things into account, all things into consideration. Paying the rent is important. 25th of September, turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. Do it left, do it right. That 180 degrees. For the gas went down a bit. Oh, it went up again, 3 cents. It was 152 yesterday, 2 days ago, 151 even. So 4 cents, it went up 4 cents. Yeah, it was 151, it went up 4 cents. But last week was 166 at one point. So I guess it's still down, although if you compare it to 2020, February, March 2020, average gas price was, it was 93 cents. So that adds up because that's more than 70% if you calculate the percentage. So that always adds a little bit of that rock and roll with that. And that's always on the go to add a little bit of that dimensions where we have the popularity of the driving, you know. And here we got that strike. STM strike, Société de Transport de Montréal here, the public transit here. Beautiful flowers down the corner. There's another one. And the fourth one, the fourth one was in the back. Got 4 there, stick it in, and that is something we gotta get doing with that drill. Another one. So there's the compost. I worked on the compost project here in Montreal, NDG neighborhood, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, between a few months in 2018 and beginning of 2019. Like 4 months total. So I brought in the bins. I was delivering the bins, doing door to door, doing delivery of the bins, delivering of pamphlets, kind of education. And this I love that I was part of the compost to bring in for more environmental action, which it takes the individual, but we got to do it right. Individual recycling and composting, you know, it takes individual and collective action. So these are the compost bins. You know, it's important to compost and recycle properly, and you know, that's rock and roll with that. And here I am marching to the mountain and in and out, not more than 4 hours, and I don't want to go more than 5 hours. 5 hours max. Max. Actually, I just want to kind of in and out it a little bit plus than 4 hours, but I'm not gonna do a long video because depending on the rain, and I don't want to damage my work tool. You know, this is my work tool apparatus here that I got, and can't afford a new one because now my only stress is financial, economic, you know. Besides that, I'm in a good mood, you know, and joyous now. And was a bit delayed, and missed some deadlines in my past years, and you know, that's beautiful yellow flowers, which you know I love. When I see yellow flowers, that's always get a little bit of that smile on my face in the corners as I go joyously to the mountain and back. And always the dynamics are with gratitude, meditation, and you know, the civilizational complex, and of course the rock and roll, where we endeavor to see a little bit of that vote. Yeah, I think there's a voting going on in November, and I gotta check out the platforms. You know me, I'm a philosopher myself. Turn your heads left and right. Even if it's a one way, I always do it both ways, because you never know, somebody might be out of town and coming and not knowing the traffic circulations. And I just saw a little bit of a video about concerns about the truckers and the trucking industry here in Quebec, Canada, North America. It's always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, you know. So I'm from Rhode Island, and there's a bit of concerns because it seems that there has been more and more accidents in the past years during COVID that I've never been before, and there's some weird, perhaps even illegal things going on in relation to the issuing of permits And we're gonna have to look more into that, what's going on, because there's been a correlation with that. Was on the news here in Canada in the past 4 days, and today I saw another video in relation thereof. And you know, you gotta be careful with the trucks, you know, machines, you know, big machines. And salute the truckers, always rock and roll for the truckers, along with the daycare workers who change some diapers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, public workers who embellish and put little gardens like this for me, for you, for us to enjoy, you know. And that's in the private and the public. See, both we got flowers, and then we got those beautiful yellow flowers that I love very much. In that corner, always a joy to pass by here, and that yellow fluorescent gives me a bit of a, I guess, a bit of joy, you know. And yeah, so we're gonna check up on that again, see what's going on with the truckers, and salute, hey, truckers, butchers, construction workers, farmers, and daycare workers, and electricians, the plumbers, the construction workers, those who change the diapers. They also in those daycares gotta think about the firefighters and those cooks and the warehouse workers. Hey, those warehouse workers, dock workers, those docks, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, always for the 10 to 15, the 3 integral for the North American Collectif. As you know, I was born in the United States 3 times, post 76. Once was a woman, twice was a man. And when I was born as a man, post 76, served in the same United States Armed Forces. If you're into reincarnations and more mystic spiritual affairs such as that, you gotta read one of my favorite poems, Through a Glass Darkly, by George Patton. George Patton, the General of the United States, wrote about, he believed in reincarnations, but he didn't mention in that poem that he was also a woman, because he was my wife in a past life, and I was his wife, so we were both vice versa, husband and wife, wife and husband. And I guess we kind of balanced, structured the whole affair of the civilizational complexes where we are now to be redressed in the middle. And you know, I have great hope, although I'm myself financially stressed, I have great hope for us to attain and move forward in the 21st century. Nice beautiful flowers, and it's always a joy, you know, to see people working out, to see people training, to see people exercising, and you know, to get a little bit of that rock and roll drill and to be able to perform. And what do we have here? We got some lettuce, I guess, you know. We got some, there's just romaine lettuce thereof, and that's a good lettuce with that. And somebody's gonna take that lettuce and eat and enjoy. And here the fridge is empty, but that's what that rock and roll drills. And here we got something. I have no idea what this is. What is this? It says a D on it. I guess it's a mystery. It has a bell. Oh, from Taco Bell maybe? Yeah, Taco Originals. And we got a bread. Bread I don't need, but somebody needs the bread. Gonna leave it there for somebody else. For somebody else, the bread. I'm not gonna take anything today, because usually I put. I'm just gonna maybe take 4 leaves and eat on the way now. Wanna see me eat some romaine lettuce, I guess, if you want, you know. You can see me to eat a little bit of that lettuce. I guess it's washed by the rain. Any brothers or uncles who eat romaine lettuce there? Oh, and I have found a full one, so maybe I should gobble it up. Gobble it up for that lettuce. And there's just something here where we got ourselves to be, so I'm just gonna take from this one and just Essen on the go. Oh yeah, it's in somebody. It's the leftovers basically. Gonna eat some lettuce. And so, if we go to the mountain, I want to salute again the firefighters, the butchers, the electricians, the plumbers, the nurses, the doctors with it, you know. Cause that beauty. the doctors, the nurses, and the electricians, the farmers. How much lettuce is now? Well, Quebec we produce lettuce, romaine lettuce. We produce even on the island of Montreal lettuce. So we grow lettuce all across North America, Canada, United States, and even in Montreal. I remember when I did urban farming, we had harvested some lettuce, you know, and some tomatoes I have. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Yellow, and these ones raw. I love me that yet. Thank you, public workers who put flowers such as this. It's always a beauty. Wow, what a gorgeous. Oh yeah, this is just lovely. Gonna have to smell. Oh yeah, this is just a nice color there, and this is part of the garden, eh? That's public, that's for all of us. I always love, thank you to the public workers who, you know, that's work right there, eh? It took so much work, of course, to do it, to plant it, and to do it with that, and you know, to just plant those flowers, eh? It took some brain, some muscle, and here as well. This is also public. It's quite beautiful, eh? Look at that. Isn't that just amazingly beautiful here? Although there's some trimming to be done, and those ones are just the black and the yellow, like little sunflowers. Always a beautiful garden here on island, on the island of Montreal, the Hawk, H-A-W-K, island of the hawk. If you look from above, it looks like a hawk, my totem bird, you know. But I guess that could be not necessarily so for others. It could be that you're gonna say that it's resembles something else, right? It's, I guess, not 100%, but it does look like a bird to me with spread wings. If you look, it's not necessarily that it's a hawk, although we have hawks here, the hawk species of birds, right? And the H-A-W-K, and we have it in Montreal, and on the mountain we have, sometimes you see it, and I captured them on camera, even a flock of hawks, and that's really cool. So back to lettuce, you know, we have lettuce here in Montreal, and we grow it we have urban farming here. We even have honey. We have bees, we have honey, we have potatoes, you know. Now it's, of course, more urban farming type of small lots, but it was a big farming before wow, that was a long time ago, but because Montreal was the most populated city for many hundreds of years, eh? Now we're second most populated city in Canada after Toronto. Toronto, I think it overtook Montreal 2012, 2015, something like that, in the 21st century. 2010 maybe, 2007, gotta check. When did actually Montreal lose the #1 spot for population? Because Montreal has about 2.5 million people, right, on the island, and then with the north and the south, the metropolitan area is 4.5 million. So in other words, it's like a small country, basically. Basically, it is like a small country. If you think about it in such terms, Montreal is really a small country, like a small country's population. But when we extend it to the north and the south, then we add population to the city, right? We add a few million, 1 million each side, basically, kind of relatively so, if we are to include the north and the south shore now. But of course, live on the island, and as a matter of fact, you know, I've been thinking, when is the last time that I actually left the island of Montreal? So for sure, it's been at least 6 years, maybe 7, maybe even more than 8. Because in 2017, in summer 2017, I crossed Canada, I went coast to coast, ocean to ocean. I have the tickets, I am auctioning them, by the way, you know. That event changed my life. That event changed my whole life, you know. Crossing Canada coast to coast, that event changed my whole life. So crossing Canada coast to coast made me realize what a great country we have, and that established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And ever since then, you know, I've been most of my work days to post that event, which I celebrated last week, closed it, the celebration, because in August and September 2017, I went with my anonymous friend. We crossed coast to coast, ocean to ocean, that's what it is, and we crossed coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and in August we went to BC, British Columbia, and of course we went to Vancouver, and then in September we went to Nova Scotia, Halifax. So first time we went by bus. Bus, it was 3.5 days. The bus ride was 3.5 days. So that was the bus ride, you know. Bus ride was 3.5 days. So then by bus, of course, it was a long trip going in and out. Of course, it was a long trip. Coming also is 3.5 days. So total amount we spent on the bus was 7 days, you know. 7 days. Yeah, that was quite something. Hey, think about that. 7 days on the bus, you know. 7 days on the bus. 7 days on the bus, you know. 7 days on the bus, you know. That was quite something, you know. Quite something. 7 days on the bus. That was really, wow, that was really something. For me, it was a whole experience, you know. I always say, wow, that event in my life really made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And ever since then, you know, I've been on a fitness journey. Ever since then, I've been on a fitness journey with that. I'm just gonna throw some trash in this. I have to actually recycle it because so yeah, we have to do our proper recycling, hey. So this I have to recycle. And thank you for the donation. I really am looking to. I can't afford it because that's my only stress now, financial. But I want to get creatine. Supposedly it's good because I've been on a fitness journey ever since 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast. Hey, nice, beautiful flowers. Look at those. What? Gotta do it a little bit. This is public, eh? Wow. I don't want to damage them. I don't want to damage them at all. Can I smell you? You know I love you. There and there. Well, hey, look at that. Isn't that just brightens my whole March, you know? It's just, I love flowers and gardens like that. It's so beautiful, and those flowers are gorgeous. So, in 2017, I crossed Canada coast to coast. But in August, we went by bus, and in September to Halifax, Nova Scotia, we went by train. It was 25 hours and 44 minutes. So more than a day just by train. That was what got me out of depression as being suicidal. You know, that's always something which I discuss, and because I was depressed and suicidal, and I am, of course, if you check all the transcripts, I'm advocating for the implementation of the DRT and the creation of several institutions, public-private partnership-based, beautiful, and to finance tourism. This is a lovely garden. So, just to pause a little bit, in a counterpoise, that I have experienced urban gardening in Montreal. Like I did it a few times, and that was quite something. And look at those gorgeous flowers there. What, so beautiful. September flowers, and these ones, look at these. Love these, so beautiful, just gorgeous. Yeah. What, that is just so lovely. My goodness, this is a beautiful yellow. It's a sort of lemony yellow, but I just love it so much. It's so nice. Love you. And of course, the whole garden here is just exceptionally beautiful. With these ones, the red ones, my favorite color is red. But when it comes to flowers, I love yellow flowers. But all this is also so nice. Look at that. I am just beautiful, man. Yeah. And yellow there. They're the yellow ones. And all over there, such a beautiful garden. I love it so much here. Wow. It's raining down. It's raining. Good water for you. Hey, look at those. It's just so nice, man. Oh yeah, look at that. That is just gorgeous. It looks more red on the camera, but these ones are so nice here. And I wish I can't. Of course, I wouldn't because they're private. But so I wish I could afford to buy on the market from my anonymous friend. It wasn't my friend because of the money, but I never really had any, in the past years. I mean, I had many jobs, but like many Aspies, people who are neurodivergent, we tend to lose them often, and that has been a problem which I encountered over the past years, maintaining long-term employment. Maintaining long-term employment. So maintaining long-term employment has been problematic for me, That has been a very difficult situation, and this is not for me, because for my whole Aspie community, people who are Aspies, have Asperger's, who are neurodivergent, who live on the autistic spectrum. Autism, it is on the spectrum of autism, also known as HFA, high-functioning autism, but before it was known as Asperger's, before like 2013, 2014, they merged together. And yeah, 80% of Aspies, it's a very high unemployment rate. It's not that we don't have jobs. These are beautiful black also. the beautiful, see how they are like all black, and it's so nice blackness of them. It's like also very nice, see? Nice, beautiful. With the yellow ones, they together there. So that is also something which I gotta discuss, and I discuss, for my fellow Aspie community who are neurodivergent. Again, it's not a mental illness. It's at all, That's where we have to draw the line. It's not an illness. It's not a disease. I'm not a disease. Asperger's is not a disease. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. I'm just using the word disease because it's not. Because I remember people were saying when I was at work a few years ago during COVID, I had many jobs. It's just like keeping them is difficult because we socialize differently, and we have this neurodivergence where our brain is different and it has these mutations where we process information differently than you, the 99%, the neurotypical percentage, who are 99% of the population. That is, of course, just how we are, and how we see the world differently. Hey, you gotta slow down there, eh? It's slow down here for the pedestrians, for the youth, eh? It's a one way, but still, you can come by that way because it's something. So I'm gonna come back to Asperger's. In 2017, I crossed Canada coast to coast, and before that, for like a few years, I was depressed. I was suicidal. Aspies encounter this problem a lot. Aspies, and I remember moving. I used to live in a very moldy place, still on the island of Montreal. It's like a small island, and it was very small. Look at these, wow, gorgeous, love it. It was like a small island. Back to where I lived, it's a big island, Montreal. On the island, flowers on the island. I was thinking of a song I wrote, Flowers on the Island, because I do that rock and roll. I compose, write songs, but I know vocally I'm not that of a good vocalist myself. It's just I compose them orally, so don't get really annoyed by the voice. If you do, well, I guess you don't listen to those little rock and roll pieces, but I gotta spit them out. But of course I do spit them out constantly, and in the dynamics, of course, that I love rock and roll, and I'm an Aspie who does rock and roll, creates rock and roll songs daily, parallel to fitness and sports, and it's Geopolitiks 24/7, lots and lots to Geopolitiks to digest. I guess by next Monday, so I'm gonna rest. So 4 days I gotta work on those speeches of the United Nations, because I still have to meditate deeply on the new developments in those terms of the geopolitical events which unfold on every hour. Every hour there's geopolitics, of course, is always every hour. It is a constant evolution and a constant change, and money never sleeps, it says. And of course the same is with geopolitics. Geopolitics also never sleeps in many ways. There's always geopolitical events, see? There's always geopolitical events unfolding. So there's always geopolitical events on the hourly basis. So every hour is, because we have time zones, right? So I'm going to get back to geopolitics. I want to just discuss, but that is basically, I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist. I develop strategies for the North American Collective on philosophies, theories, and work tools, because it's a frame of reference, such as the DMAA. You can discover it in my past videos, the Direct Military Assistance and Action, which has certain consequences, and it relates to NATO, our military alliance, which Canada is part of, North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries, and now we have 32 countries, and Sweden was the last country to join. Sweden was the last one to join, and there's just something which we gotta get on those dynamics with that, and that's just where we're gonna discuss a little bit later on that, depending on how long I make the video, because I don't want to ruin my work too. I'm protecting it from the rain. And here my bosom, and holding it close to my chest where I do this video now, because it's raining. But we go to the mountain, whether raining, whether whatever else, it's a constant thing with me, going to the mountain often, sometimes every day. Aspies, we have these routines. So back to traversing Canada coast to coast, that event really made me have a strong revelation of the great North American complex, civilizational complex which we have, and Canada is a great country which I have it tatted up. I got that Canada tatted up on literally I have a tattoo with a flag with a maple leaf on Canada, you know. We're more than maple syrup though, hey? We're way, 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 way more than maple syrup. We got great cuisine. I was hearing a critique of Canadian cuisine. It's just that, you know, the restaurants, you have to, the restaurants serve some, but, you know, you come to me, you want to experience great Canadian cuisine, Canadian, you come to me for the past years, you know, years and years and years, which much financial stress. But during the winter, I could cook you some squashes, you know. I have 4 types of squashes. Usually I like to do 4 types of squashes mixed, or 2 types of squashes with potatoes and something else on the side. And then I would do, of course, some beef. I could do a little bit of Canadian stew and squashes in the oven, and I cook them with some pepper, some cheese. You know, you get that Canadian food, man. You get that I could do so many different dishes with just squashes. You know, I could do with chicken, I could do with pork with beef, and I could do it veggie style with cheese. And it's just, of course, you gotta know. So we got great Canadian cuisine, at least myself as a Canadian, you know, Quebec Canadian. I can cook you some of that good Canadian food with everything produced, grown in Canada. Everything, the cheese made in Canada. Quebec, we got over 700 cheeses, just Quebec. Canada here, and across Canada we got grapes, we got wine, we got 4 seasons, mate. So and winter squashes. Whoa, nobody cooks winter squash. Well, somebody probably does, but I gotta say that when it comes to winter cooking, I cook very good squashes. You know, just winter squash. You might not even know what that is, but it's SQUASH, squash. So, you know. Anyways. So, back to 2017, crossing Canada really made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and ever since then, before that I was depressed, I was suicidal, you know, depressed and suicidal, and for a few years. And as far as I used to live in a very moldy place. I didn't even have a proper kitchen. The kitchen was in my room, so small, tiny, on the ground, moldy, very moldy, MOLD, which is dangerous for health. And I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm grateful I have a bathtub now. I can bathe, you know, because I love taking baths, and I wish I could afford a massage therapy session, but hey, man has financed the firefighters a massage therapy session, finance the firefighters, finance those who pick up the garbage. Public workers pick up the garbage, the recycling, and along with that, financing of them a massage therapy session, because they're athletes too. Owners, and players of the NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB. I'm gonna get out of the way from my fellow uncle who does a little bit of that jogging there, you know, always getting a little bit out of the way, 4 steps, and I encourage you all to work out, try and exercise, so we get a little bit of those 4 steps on the side, and then we drill it in on the other side. So yeah, I can cook great Canadian cuisine, you know. I just need the squashes, and you bring me squashes, I'm gonna cook you something really good, really, really good, squashed up, you know, dragon squash, special winter cuisine, man. You come into Dragon's Lair, but I can't have anybody over. It's way too small where I live. We can't have people over now. Where I live, we can't have anybody over. Where I live, you know. Where I live, we can't have anybody over, really, you know. Where I used to live, even less. I used to live still on the island of Montreal, on Clan Ronald in Côte des Neiges, very small, moldy place, and I moved. I thought I moved in 2016, but it ends up that supposedly I moved in summer 2015, not 2016. So it's been a few years, actually, 10 years this year since I lived there. You know, it's gonna be 11 at the end of June, and the 1st of July, I think. It's gonna be 11 years, maybe 1st of July. So I'm not sure exactly, you know, because my memory is on the blackout, you know. I just have triggered amnesia. I have problem, of course, remembering, you know, my life prior to February, like winter 2014, prior to February, end of January, February, winter 2014, so like January-ish, before like February 2014, I just have problems with memory, man. It's a blackout, you know. It's like a amnesia, you know. Maybe I was a junkie, maybe I was an alcoholic, you know. I was trying to kill my aspiness and neurological difference and autism. And I remember I was viciously attacked by surprise years and years and years ago. It was in the Montreal Metro. Probably because of, I don't know, repressed interracial homoerotic desires, which some of us have and repress it. Eh? That's why they didn't let Michael Sam play in the NFL, because he kissed his white boyfriend when he got drafted. But that's another story. Anyways, I was viciously attacked by surprise in Montreal Metro and on the ground, and it was hit in the head. It hit my head on the concrete. I don't know if it was with a blunt object that hit in the head, but definitely with fists. But it was a vicious surprise attack, but maybe it was with an object, you know. I just remember I was bloodied up. Went home bloodied up and was in pain and had a dislocated right arm, shoulder, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital. That's why I gave myself, I have four new deadlines. Till October 31st to go retrieve my records, archives. I hope they have them at the Jewish General Hospital. And another one is to give some clothes that I have, donate some clothes, and write lots of letters to send for North American NATO members, North American NATO member countries' leaders in relation to my prediction of 2019 and all my work done in the past 8+ years. And to propose again for the third time to my anonymous friend, because I got 2 no's, you know, but if I get a yes, I will become the richest man in the world. If I'll get a yes, I would become the richest man in the world if I get a yes, I guess. Gonna have to get a little bit of that wedding ring, I guess, but that is something which we have, of course, to get it now in the foundation. So anyway, so that was 2014 spring, you know, like before spring, actually winter, February, before February. So but if I'm to take into account, since we're 25th of September, so let's say February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, so that's 7 months, and minus 11, that's 11 years and 7 months, right? So that's a long time ago. That's a long time ago. So I have a very, very, very good memory, but of the past years, you know, careful. Of the past years, you know. So, of the past years, like 8, 9, 10, 11, then prior to around that date, January, January-ish, 2014, early 2014, prior to like early 2014, I just don't know, it's like access denied, you know, type of situation. But that's a long time ago. I mean, 11 years and 7 months ago, I definitely died a few times. I even died of COVID, so even accepting my neurodivergence, you know, that I'm different, you know, even accepting, of course, that I'm different, you know, because Aspies were different. We have this neurological difference, and there's no medication, and the cause is, it's a new controversial development now that Tylenol in women during pregnancy, Tylenol, I guess, over the limit or excessive Tylenol use is not specific. You gotta check out a little bit of those details, because, you know, sometimes Aspies were detail concerned with that. So we have, of course, all that details and appellations which we have now to be constructive and constructive thereof, of course, to be in the dynamics, of course, where we got to be the same level playing field, where that is just speculative or there's actually a scientific relation to the ingredient in Tylenol, because Tylenol is a brand. Tylenol is a brand, is the ingredient, right? The amencetolafin. We just triggered a past life memory when from that word kind of sounds a little bit ancient Egyptian, you know. It's like the pyramids still remain, the stars thereof. Eh? Please, no, just recycle. Only like Tim Hortons cups there. Like, what the fuck, man? Just recycle it. Make sure it's empty. Recycle. Is it a DD? Or is it said DODD, DDDD? Dragons, Dracula's dragons. This has to be recycled. I'm just gonna make sure it's empty. Just gonna make sure it's empty. Just gonna make sure it's empty, so you have of course to get it on the go with that. So that is something which we have of course to be analyzed in all the DD Dracula dragon. Nobody's born a dragon, and I guess that's that DD with that, and it's something which we have of course to be together in the environmental aspects where we have to be conclusive of course and to be with that, and that is just something which we have to conclude. So back to of course my memory loss. It's just not that the important for me, you know. Sometimes memory comes back and I don't really know. But so back to what causes autism, though this is inconclusive. It's inconclusive, right? So what causes Asperger's is inconclusive. What causes Asperger's is inconclusive. So of course the Asperger's autism is of course linked with the HFA's one and the same things, you know. So that is just something which we have of course now. So it's in the configuration of course that it is something where we got the dynamics of investigating, but it's possible. I cannot rule out a no. But I don't think so. But I mean, you can't rule it out because the cause until now we don't know if it's hereditary, right? If it's hereditary or biological, you know, if it's hereditary or biological. Maybe it's a factor of combination of both what causes autism. So principally in concordium to many of the scientific community, this is going to be something which we're going to have further inquiry into. So the cause, right? The cause thereof. If it causes autism, that's something which would surprise me, because until now the causes of Asperger's and autism have been inconsequentially not proven, right? So there's no relation thereof to the cause of Asperger's yet. It could be hereditary, it could be biological or hereditary, that is genetic, genes, or it could be a combination and a factorial that combines genes, the combination of genes, and of course it could be just also environmental, right? So environmental factors. But of course, to know if it's, again, Tylenol is a brand, so saying that Tylenol causes it, it's actually the ingredient, one of the ingredients that's found in Tylenol, right? So then if we discern what ingredient it is, then we have to look what else causes the ingredient. What else causes the ingredient? What else is that? What other companies hold or products on the market have that same ingredient? Right? That would be the discernment. What else? Because there must be other products that have the same ingredient then. Right? Yes, that would be definitely it. So, but me, it's taken me years and years to accept it, because turn your heads left and right before you cross the street, because I've always rejected it. I was in denial. I said no. I'm not neurodivergent in such a manner that I have HFA Asperger's, but I'm officially part of those. Half officially of Aspies are undiagnosed. Some get diagnosed in later adult life, like myself, for about more than 9 years now, by several citizens and my anonymous friend and others who have experience in the healthcare system, you know, and have worked with Aspies and have worked with people with autism, right? Have worked with people with autism and know the characteristics. I don't use the word symptoms. I don't mind if people use the word symptoms. Even the word disability I don't use, but I say, yes, I accept that I'm less able, and quote unquote in parentheses disability in certain aspects of societal interaction, such as communication and social cues, you know, social knowledge that comes easy for you, the majority, the 99%, such as personal space, for Aspies and people with autism, and HFA is one of the same as Asperger's, have problem managing, for example, you know, the personal space of a distance of, let's say, 4 yards. An Aspie, myself, I did it. I always work on it now. Just come close to somebody, like 4 inches close to the face. So I understand now because of my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books on Asperger's, and I read, and one in particular which was loaned 4 times because it was a library loan, called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. I recommend that book fully to anybody willingly living to learn more about autism, and that's specific to Asperger's though, because Asperger's is considered to be be a milder form of autism. So it is called appreciating Asperger's syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome. These are lovely ears. Look at that. Wow. That's so nice, dude. That is really nice. So Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is a book which I highly recommend, because there it opened my eyes to my own vulnerabilities and how to work, how to be aware. Neurotypicals in the social communication, social aspect, there's this parameter called social, keeping personal space, standing at a distance, don't breach it, in other words, take a step back if you do. So I always work on that. Even in some videos you see, I can take a step back. Even my friend sometimes says, you're too close, It can be weird, awkward, bizarre, and strange, but it's not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative, it's not malicious. That's where we have to draw the line as Aspies, because we're a tiny community and we have our vulnerabilities. So these vulnerabilities can sometimes be projected by inconsequentially that we are less able in certain spheres of society. Sometimes we're even direct and straightforward. I certainly cultivate and love to be as polite as I can, as kind as I can, because kindness, goodness and kindness is something to cultivate, and I guess always to give people second, third, even fourth chances. But then I have to also position my safety, security and liberty, and in parentheses interests, but not to be too selfish and not to be overly selfish, so that we have that balance, harmony and concordiate. Because a lot of Aspies are seen, or Asperger's is seen in a more negative light, that we don't have compassion or empathy. But it's not that. It's that we have compassion and empathy if we directly affect by action mostly, rather than verbal consolation. So that is also touched upon in the book. So I would definitely, if I have friends, as of course Aspies, we have close to no friends sometimes, and an Aspie usually when people, what friends from high school, friends who stay, friends from high school from, I don't even remember my high school and higher education, and there's a high dropout rate among Aspies, but some people, Aspies have very few friends, very few, and for me I have the solution. Friends with benefits don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. I'm also androgynous pansexual, I'm into rock and roll, I'm into sports and fitness, and I am an independent geopolitical theoretical clandestine theorist who's going to drink some water here after I wait a few seconds. And see, this is an example of what I call the privilege of civilization. If you check back on my past videos in 2023, I have written, concocted, and of course presented my thesis to the world as the Aspie People's Independent Doctor, that of course civilization is a privilege, and of course the privilege of civilization manifests in such as abilities of having this running water, which of course all the canal and aqueducts across the North American civilizational complex, soon to be the 63 Imperial Republic, let it ride and let it be. I'm gonna LOV and dance and hydrate. But this is a privilege of civilization right here, see? Imagine all the work and brains and muscle put for us to have this water here, to have potable water, to have to wash the dishes, to do the sanitation, when we do the washroom, when we take a bath, when we take a shower, when we cook, eh? So I'm so grateful for the workers who build that, it's brains and muscle. Think about that. Just to have that water is quite a privilege of civilization in many ways, we all have it. Whether you're a millionaire or a billionaire, you also have the privilege of civilization. As a citizen like myself who's neurodivergent and who's only stressed now, thank goddess, because, I'm no longer depressed and suicidal. And I survived that vicious surprise attack and other unspeakable deeds against me, and I'm grateful for what I have every day. Every day is a gratitude. Every day is a blessing. I live since I had COVID in 2020, I really live for today. But I have great dreams and hopes and aspirations, and ambitions, some benevolent for the greater good, of course. Some of my dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, is a benevolent dream for all. A benevolent dream for all. A benevolent dream for all. Is a benevolent dream for all, and I just wanted to show a little bit of something here before we progress. That this is, of course, as I wait for the light, a geopolitical, see, it says vive le Québec libre, vive le Québec libre, vive le Québec libre, vive le Québec libre, live the Quebec, free Quebec. So that is a geopolitical statement, of course, a geopolitical statement, and that geopolitical statement is, of course, for those who will to separate. So that is basically some really unresolved conflict. But it's not an open conflict, and it's not really, I don't call it a conflict anymore. It's a disagreement, of course, sort of a disagreement in many ways. And of course, we had a referendum for Quebec basically to become an independent nation state for Quebec. Quebec to become an independent nation state. Of course, I always laugh because I would vote no, but I say what I would like because of that. I would, of course, like the fact that we would get rid of the king. There would be no mention of the king, you know. The king of England would be no longer. And all the hereditary aspects of the monarchy, you know. The monarchy would be gone. As, of course, Uncle Connie pledged allegiance to the king of England and his heirs, eh? Uncle Connie, when he became Prime Minister, pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. I always say that Canada should have become a republic right on the 1st of January 2000, when the turn of the millennium took place. Right? On the 1st of January the year 2000, Canada should have become a republic and should have disrelegated all the reference to the King of England and his heirs, and we should have been a republic. It's time for the republic. The Canadian Republic. It's time for the Canadian Republic and parallel the Democratic Imperial Republic of the North American Collective to fuse the true north, strong and free with the land of the free and the home of the brave is not enough. We've got to have some loving, justice and righteousness. And see how now my brain works? Because of this neurodivergence, I see one truck, two trucks, three trucks, four trucks that I saw going north and south. So some are going north and some are going south, and the other ones already passed underneath here. The other ones counted. So, and those four trucks with maybe 40 cars. Of course, they're all a bit also prone to some outside interference from outside, not just, of course, the price of gas, because, of course, they're all paying more price of gas now, of course, where we got to be doing on the go, and of course that's all the relegation, of course, of the industriousness. But of course, to keep in mind that the price of gas has been increased so much, and now how my brain works, I'm trying to estimate the costs for these cars that I see. Of course, it could be only a mathematical estimation, and of course the trucks with it. A lot of the causes of their price increasing and the cost of living is the burden of transportation, which of course, if you compare since the year 2000, February 2000 until now, the price of gas has gone about 70+%, about 75% even, average price increase in gas, while the salaries have stagnated. So thus it creates additional pressure. It creates so much additional pressure on the consumer, citizen consumer. I don't use the word consumer, I use citizen consumer, or consuming citizen, right? Because we're citizens and we got to get that novus civis as new citizens. And yes, it's a pleasure to eat and enjoy, right? It's to consume and eat. Sure, of course, myself, you know, I love my wafers, so wafers are something special to me, and I eat, I enjoy. I'm very physical, I have lust, I have physicality, but you know, I try to be that balance which you have to kind of reharmonize here, at least in the North American Collective. So of course I gotta salute their athletes. Salute LOV, and they, I don't know how much they're making an hour average, how much they're making an hour average. Find out. Allies and armies pledge your allegiance. Legions, find out. Let me know. Write some letters. Join the dragon army. Blah, 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 blah. No one to do nothing about it. Blah, blah, blah. And of course, we gotta give them some tickets to the hockey games. And if I would be able to afford, I would definitely buy every local season ticket for the new PVHL Professional Women's Hockey League, because they rock, you know, the Victoire, they rock. They play as good as the men. I really love it. So good. And of course, dancing is my favorite sport. Dancing is the sport I practice and I love the most, although I love North American football, gridiron, not that much soccer, but I don't mind soccer. And of course, hockey on the skates, and all of there's of course dynamics where we are of course to interject. And appel, this is another thing that's coming here. That says with courage for Montreal. That's French. We love our French here. And of course, what I just mentioned a priori, that's a geopolitical unresolved, in a way, conflict, right? In a way, it's a conflict because there's still a tendency for, in the Quebecois nation, of which I'm a Quebecois myself, I'm a Quebecois Canadian. I'm a Quebecer Canadian North American, although even I was born in past lives, previous incarnations, right on the island, eh? But I lived as a woman, though, between 1688 and 1735. Once as a man, I met Louis Cyr, the strongman Louis Cyr, in 1904. I served in the police, Montreal police. Not long. I didn't serve that much. Just a little bit, as I served a little bit in the RCMP before it was known as the RCMP, and sometimes a farmer. I was more than 2,800 years ago, I was the priest Aspie who orated the great Retria to Lycurgus. More than 2,800 years ago, I was the great priest Aspie who orated the great Retria to Lycurgus. More than 2,800 years ago, I was the great priestess Retria who orated the great Retria to Lycurgus. Beautiful flowers, as I am the priestess. Hana. Priestess, dragon, get that 2 in 1. It's always God bless and Goddess kiss our coming of our empire, which is fundamentally the dancing goddess and the dragon king, and which is fundamentally, in essence, a call for a mass public-private partnership across the North American collective civilizational complex, and of course across the NATO sphere as we go now east. So that aside, I want to just continue a little bit of meditation there about the cost of gas. So sometimes, because you know, Aspies, our brains are different, and again, not all Aspies are good at computer science, eh? Yes, it is true that statistically disproportionately Aspies, people with Asperger's, are way better, like in terms of ratio, percentage ratio. Aspies are, not that they're way better technically, because some neurotypicals are also very good parallel to Aspies. It's just that the ratio of how many are above average and very good at computers exceeds, compared that we are a small tiny population. It's about 20%, 1 out of 5 of Aspies about that are very, very good at computers, the coding and science and all that. So of course it's something which we have of course to traduce and translate in the statistical numbers, that referentially of course, being that we're less than 1% of the population, and 1/5 out of our small tiny population of course is of course congruently with that, and that is something which we have of course to do, in that congruence is in the last stage of course where we are to endeavor like to be, you know, to get it on the parallel meaning of what that translates as, that it's about maybe 11 times higher. So for one neurotypical who's good at computers, there's 11 Aspies, but since there's about 99 neurotypicals to 1 Aspie, then there's more neurotypicals who work. But in terms of percentages, it's about between 1%. Different regions such as California, New York, here Quebec have different statistics. So it's about 1% to 4%, right, of neurotypicals who are very good, excellent at computers, super good at computers, right? So that's the ratio. Myself, I'm good at geopolitics. In a parallel life, the timeline, parallel self, I'm also an Aspie, but there I'm a super good scientist. worker in technology, and I build design with others, supercomputers, super satellites, super microchips, super communication antennas, and smartphones. And of course, all that design that I do in that parallel life, it's in the year of darkness. It is November 24th, 2029. It is the year darkness 2029, and the month is November 24th, 2029. So of course that parallel adjudication is, of course, we're building those satellites, and of course supercomputers allows, of course, the NATO plateau to function integrity, and with integral, of course, for total security, service, and defense, because it's a mass public-private partnership that I built with other super constellations of satellites and citizen integration. And in that parallel life, it is 33 countries part of NATO, and Israel and Mexico are part of NATO. And you know, but before October 7th, which was Israel's 9/11, the terrible attacks, there was, and the equally terrible for response and retribution, you know, by the IDF and the Israelis and the Israel army. But before October 7th, I was advocating, and I was going for both Israel and Mexico to join simultaneously NATO, who only invoked once the Article 5, which is NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries, of which Canada, we're part of as Canadians, Quebecers, Canadians, we're part of, Canada, United States, and 30 others, and Sweden is the last one to join. Sweden joined last year as the 32nd, so there's 32 member states. I'm not going to address the expansion of NATO. I'm well aware that more than 4 countries, including Bulgaria, Poland, Hungary, Romania, which were part of the Warsaw Pact. Warsaw Pact was, of course, the common defense security, collective security for the Eastern Bloc. Right? That was for the Eastern Bloc. Warsaw Pact. When those countries were communist, and they joined 2 decades later, they joined NATO. So, yeah, of course, I specialize in geopolitics from the 20th and 21st century. I can go back in history and know back of history, but my specialty is the 20th and 21st century, especially the post 9/11, because I am myself living here now, although I was many past lives, many incarnations, from ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Rome, ancient Sumeria, ancient India, and here. Even before 1492, I lived in past previous lives incarnations. But now, it is 25th of September 2029, and I see these beautiful yellow flowers. They quadruple my smile, and I sing that King is absent, my Uncle Carney. The king is absent. It's time for the republic, and I've discussed my initiatives, propositions, and of course all my theories, protocols are what I call universal revolutionary centrism. My universal revolutionary centrism is North American centric. So understand the philosophy, the theories is that we North Americans and all who come to join us, and all my brothers and sisters, including my brothers and sisters blacks, or black or white, 13.4%, my brothers and sisters blacks, and you know, if you're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman, I'm androgynous, pansexual. You gotta be 18 plus though. You know, 18 plus, and we could do that gridiron love, rock and roll, dancing rainbow, and you know, we're playing on that LGBTQ and being androgynous, pansexual myself, and all who come to join us in the coming of our empire as novus civis, as new citizens here in the new world. Because we're a new civilizational collective which is not totally divorced but is distinct. So we're not totally divorced but we're distinct from Western civilization. So that is something which you have to appellate construingly. We're not divorced but we're distinct from Western civilization. No, I'm not myself sexually frustrated, and I have a good masturbation. I just live with all my scars, and even on my what I call clit, dick, clit, 50-50 androgynous sometimes goes rocket, thank you goddess, and it expands the big, like a big patch. I don't have the $300 to go to the dermatologist to see what it is on my, you know, my privates, because it could be psoriasis, eczema. Because I itch sometimes, I scratch and I put up cream, but I gotta get a better cream. I gotta go to a specialist dermatologist, but I just can't afford it. I send emails to 4 different dermatologists. They all said $300. I said I'm financially stressed and I'm in the red. I don't have that now. But as you know, I get erections, and God is best. Sometimes it goes that rocket. So I do have a healthy masturbation, I guess, and I'm androgynous, pansexual. You know, make that good sex, sex and rock and roll with no drugs, because I don't do drugs. I don't know if I did prior to 2014, maybe February 2014, maybe before winter 2014. Maybe I was a junkie. Maybe I was a junkie or an alcoholic, and I lived that trauma, was attacked by surprise and was bloodied up, I was hit in the head, hit my head on the concrete floor, and I don't know if I was, maybe. Sometimes memory comes back, but I don't like violence. I just don't like violence myself. I'm somebody who, I do not like violence, I just don't like it. But I am hyper vigilant, I'm hyper vigilant. I live with hyper vigilance, and my theories, protocols for the Dragon Army, the new 911 Dragon Total Integrated North American protocols, are only strictly for defense. That's why my DMAA is totally crucial. The DMAA, Direct Military Assistance in Action, is totally crucial. For assistance and action is totally crucial to understand fully from the perspective of course, where we are, for the civilizational perspective where we rock and roll now in the 21st century. That my theories protocols are best for the 21st century, as I even gonna get into that soon. But of course, that I actually predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I have proof, I have the video. I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. In October 2019, I predicted that in the coming years there's gonna be a international conflagration, aka World War III. Because that's what I do, and supposedly even before, I have a high school diploma, I graduated high school, and supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College because I have a very good reference letter. I have a very good reference letter. Very good reference letter, so that is something which we have ourselves, a very good reference letter. Supposedly that's where I wanted to head, so that's why I know probably that geopolitics was always part of my special interest and my passion, special interest. As Aspie, Aspie people like myself with neurodivergence, and again, it's not an illness, it's not a disease, yes, we can be strange, awkward, weird, bizarre, but we're not evil, bad, negative, or malicious, or demonic at all. It's just our brains are different, and thus we can seem weird, awkward, and bizarre and strange, and the way we communicate can sometimes be very utilizing too much maybe formal academic institutional or academic formal dictums and scholarly verbosity. Sometimes in certain situations, even myself, I always have to double check, and that's why I gotta thank my anonymous friend for always being open to the dialogue which we have in Concordiate, and it's just been of tremendous help and tolerance. And it's sometimes very hard for neurotypicals for us to build those bridges, because we have to build, of course, the bridges in Concordiate. Whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges. So of course those extra large bridges where we build now is of course in the Concordiate, where we have of course to get it on the go now. So of course basically we have to build bridges. I don't have antagonistic, resentful feelings or other feelings towards you than 99% of the population who are neurotypicals. I have a lot to contribute, and not just the trillions of kisses created from the goddess and my great dancing and rock and roll. I also have the geopolitics, and mostly I'm focused about my work. And if you want to be your friends with benefits, you're black, you're white, you want to... I'm not frustrated sexually or anything like that, sexually frustrated. If I would be, I would discuss it. I say, hey man, I have a healthy masturbation, but it's something that, what I want to say is, I could really have exchange massage therapy sessions, That would be really nice. Exchanging, trading massage, because the body is a temple for pleasure and purpose, and I can't afford it financially. So what is that, blah blah blah, it's just, we can communicate intellectually and be friends on an intellectual basis. If you're into geopolitics, then we can converse, and even other intellectual matters, because of course geopolitics encompasses the whole universe. It encompasses history, politics, religion, of course even science and labor, and of course statistics, and all the things of course that matter in the congruency of the North American collective civilizational complex, which is part of course of the world, as I am for world peace. But fundamentally I know North America, so of course knowing North America, I am also a North American, a Canadian Quebecer, so I would have fundamentally a lack of direct experience when I discuss other civilizational complex or nation states. So it'll be also from an educational perspective, and I bet that if I do go and retrieve the archives, so let's say from summer 2014 to like summer 2019, because after COVID I didn't go that much, since I survived COVID. I thought I was gonna die during COVID. February 2020, it was like death, pestilence, and disease. It was like death, pestilence, and disease for me. So that's why I call also to see. This is a weird thing now. You're gonna witness Asperger's one-on-one. So see, you see that. That's a V, right? That's like an angle, right? And you see that angle there's like an angle, and there's another one. So now my mind kind of tries to place them. Are they there? What I know is, of course, they're less than 90 degrees, because a 90-degree angle is this, right? This is a 90 degree, and 90 times 4. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then gives you the circle. 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90 is 360, right? So those are all those 4 angles there. See, well, there's more than 4, but that one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say that you have 5, 6, 7, 8. You really have 8. They're all minus 90-degree angles. So it's kind of trying to figure out, of course, the angles of these. Yeah, that's Aspie weirdness, you know. So you might see, man, I didn't even ever thought about that. You ruined my tree gazing at trees, but that's just Asperger's for you, you know. It's just, it can be weird, you know, like that. So just in other words, when I was discussing, I saw in my mind there kind of popped a little bit of information in regards to, it doesn't work. A little bit of information in regards, of course, to the information in regards to the mathematical angles, right? Angles. So knowing that 90-degree angle has to be a certain way, you know that these are all angles which are below 90 degrees, right? So those are all angles that are below 90 degrees. That's certain, right? But of course they can vary. They can be 60, 66, 70, 56, even 50 plus. They can even be by going up a little bit by. It's only estimation, you know, because I'm not going to be able to have a precise answer in that regard. I will not. I'm not going to pretend that I'm able to say that it's 44-degree angle or 40-degree angle or 61 or 77, because it will be an estimation. I will adventure myself mathematically to say that angle is between, let's say, 44 and 65, or 45 and 65. So it's going to be ranging between. I will not even say 44 or close to 45, right? But 45 is kind of easier to know, because if you know that 90 degrees is this, then you kind of know that half of this being here in between, the angle is 90 degrees, right, in between the fingers. So that means that half is about that. So it could be that they're close to 45. So I could say around 45, more or less 4 degrees variance. Yeah, I know, Aspie is weird. Yeah, we're weird. Mathematics and angles and percentages. Me, just percentages, calculating, for example, like I said before, to go back. So just to calculate a bit economics-wise. So economics, the constant is never changing when you have a mathematical constant. And of course, for a car, such as that car or the other car, of course, the constant mathematical proposition would be, of course, that car and that car and that car and that car. In between these 4 cars, of course, each car has a mathematical constant, which is the consumption. So liters or gallons, a gallon is 4 liters. So if you have 4 liters and you have a gallon, basically a gallon is 4 liters. So basically you have per liters, 100 kilometers per liter. So how many liters does it take, you know? How many liters does it take? It takes XYZ liters, of course. It will take 11 liters maybe. 11 liters, let's say. So for that, if that one's 11, the other one's 12, the other one's 13, the other one's 14, then you have the average for those 4. Or for this car, for example. This car, let's say the constant is 15 liters per 100 kilometers, right? If it's 15 liters per 100 kilometers, that means that it pays the constant 15 liters per 100 kilometers. What's the variable? The variant is, of course, the variant, what's a variable, mathematical variable, is the price. The price and average price in February 2020 was 93 cents. 93 cents, right? So if the average price was 93 cents, and now the average price is around 163, so it's about around 70, between 70 and 75% increase, right? Let's say 72.5, in between, do a 50-50 on that, around that, more or less a few percentages, give or take, right? The estimation. So that is the variable. So that means that for every $100 spent on gas in February 2020, last month in August 2025, 5 years later, the average spent on gas is $170. See the mathematics? So that means that for the majority of the population whose salaries have not increased by between 70 and 75%, because the average salary for North Americans increase has been about 4% only. For the vast majority of the population, it has dealt a blow to purchasing power. What to spend money on other goods, services, and going out to the movies, to the restaurants, to see their favorite sports teams. Here we got those Habs, who some make millions, and who, you know, when you compare that to the women's, you see, that bugs me that last year, 2024, on the top 50 most paid athletes in the world, on the top athletes paid in the world, top athletes paid in the world, is of course the athletes not on the top. Out of the top 50, there was not one woman. 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 Not one was a woman. Out of the top 50. Can you imagine? Top most paid athletes, there wasn't even one woman. So the first 50 were all men. So of course, calculating that means that 70%, so this 70% of this calculation, of course, has been 70%. And of course, that sucks out of the wealth, right, of individual citizens who have less and less money to buy other things. Less and less money to buy other things. Less and less money to buy other things, right? Less and less. So that car who's coming now also pays about between 70 and 75% more on gas than it paid in, if it's, depending how old the car is, because it could have been produced after, but generally it would have paid more than between 70 and 75%. And all cars now, at least in Montreal, Canada, pretty much generally across the United States, give me differences in percentages. But the paradox here is that although it's not financially that feasible, the technology is not yet developed, and because of the environment, it's both an environmental problem and a financial, technological one. But you know, the tar sands in Alberta, the tar sands supposedly are actually the biggest reserves in the world. Even bigger, I think, than Saudi Arabia. Double check on that if I'm wrong. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and I'm not sure about, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Qatar, those United Arab Emirates, which are big Middle Eastern producing countries, part of OPEC, right? Iraq, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. Right? So, but supposedly there's, I'm not sure about this, but supposedly in Venezuela, they have a patch, a patch which supposedly has the biggest reserves. But it's a controversial, it's not proven. But the tar sands in Canada, the problem is that they cannot be extracted and processed, refined in a proper way, because the environment is very costly and the technology is not yet present. But supposedly the tar sands in Alberta, Canada, tar sands have billions and billions of barrels possibility in the tar sands. So we would be the first. But because of their extraction it's not so extracting the oil from tar sands, it has been more and more developed in the past 50 years, but there's still a problem. But imagine if we would be able to extract it with zero cost. So if we would be able to extract it with zero cost, not cost, but cost to the environment. Well, at some cost, we have to pay the labor and technology, right, to build the technological processes. But let's say we wouldn't harm the environment as it would now, then that would be great. We would be totally North American independent about that. And of course, there's the Keystone Pipeline. I'm not going to go into the geopolitics of pipelines, but as a geopolitical strategist, being in energy independent is something which, as our coming Imperial Democratic Republic, whether by renewable energy, which here in Quebec, gotta salute Hydro-Quebec workers of the past. Providentially, we got that 63, and this energy that I'm utilizing to make this video, and even that you see here and there, east, west, north, south, roundabout as I go, it's from clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. It's from the, you named it, you guessed it or not, it is from the, it's from the water. It's from the water, from the water, from the water, from the water. Lakes and rivers, man. It's from the water. So that's something, eh? And our energy goes, I believe, six states, or even five. Five for sure. Maybe now I think of it as 6. God, always double check on that. I want to know exactly. Is it 5 or 6? 5, I can tell you for sure. There's a possibility that it's 6 states, actually. Vermont, Maine, New York, New Jersey, and New Hampshire. I believe there's another one, but I'm not sure if it goes all the way to Massachusetts. Maybe those are the 6. And I know that all the way to the island of Manhattan. 20% of the Manhattan Island in New York, in New York City, Manhattan Island, it receives about a fifth. 20%. I think it's increased to 25 now, a quarter. So that's a considerable amount, all the way to Manhattan Island, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away, like 944 kilometers, I believe, from Montreal to Manhattan Island. Double check my on that, but I believe that's the distance, because it's south, that way, south. So if that's the case, that means that the energy goes all the way to Manhattan. You're welcome. Oh, okay, no problem. Bye, have a nice evening. So if it goes that way, I wanted to let my auntie pass first with her doggy, because little doggy there. Poodles I can pet, the other ones I can't pet too much because I start sneezing. So if our electricity goes all the way to Manhattan Island, that means that it is interjectly, of course, clean, renewable energy which does not pollute. So I always salute workers of the past. It required decades and decades and decades. This is another privilege of civilization, and we got to build more by the DRT, Detrol Fusion theory. We're going to be able to do so. The universal exchange unit. So that is, of course, the aspects, of course, in the Concordium where we have, of course, to appellate, and of course, integrate all the domain names where we have now, to be in all the appellation where we are now, to be simultaneously involved and be involved about all these domain names where we have, of course, to interject our capabilities, and of course to bet on Hydro-Quebec. So I'm gonna go back to Asperger's a bit. So calculating, you see how the brain sometimes works, and for years and years and years and years I've been told that about 9 years ago I've been kind of like unofficially, semi-officially, unofficially diagnosed by several citizens I've experienced in the healthcare system and working with Aspies and autistics, people with autism, that of course I have, of course, Asperger's, but I didn't want to accept it. I said no, until about 3.5 years ago, 44 months ago. Until 44 months ago, I've accepted it, and I said, yes. I am different. I am neurodivergent. Quote unquote, I am less able, but I don't use the word disability or disease, but there's no medication. Look, it's a snake. See the head of the snake there? It's kind of stuck in the anaconda. I guess they didn't cut his head off. Eh? It was a good snake. Does get a balance, eh? But anyways, so that is the reality of Asperger's, and please don't give me the yeah, but some Aspies are billionaires. Okay, there are Aspies who have excelled in the arts, artists, actors, and scientists. Supposedly Bill Gates has it, but he's one of those unofficial Aspies, autistics. But keep in mind that with 80% unemployment among my tiny community, who's less than 1% of a minority of the population of North America and beyond, but it has been even more and more increasing. And according to the ABC documentary, Asperger's actually what it is. So according to this documentary, I have to watch it again maybe this weekend and make a more in-depth conclusion and analysis that supposedly Asperger's is a evolutionary process. Now I don't know about that. I'm not a neuroscientist, neurosurgeon. I cannot conclude that it is an evolutionary process. If it is an evolutionary step process in mankind's evolution, then that would be, hey, I suddenly, with all the suffering, all the struggle, losing employment, losing friends, being depressed and suicidal, well, hell of a price to pay for evolution, I would guess, I would say. But hey, here I am, 25th of September. Can do some math, I guess. And I just do it automatically. Sometimes the answers just come when it comes to division, multiplication, subtraction, minus, subtraction, division, multiplication, and all those, of course, geometry and percentages. It's a different type of love, I guess. Aspie love, would we love our own way sometimes? But it is, of course, a love, and it's an automatic love, I could calculate percentages of costs and relative ratio of costs and cost prices increasing for hours and hours and hours a day, just like I do geopolitical theoretical analysis and analyzing geopolitical events on a daily basis, because every hour as the sun rises, every second there's a sunrise and a sunset, eh? So just like money never sleeps, neither does the sun, and neither does the world of geopolitics. The Holy Trinity. Geopolitics, the sun, and money. Money, geopolitics, the sun, money. Money I don't have in my hand in my bank account, but I have it in kisses, trillions of kisses through the nations of the empire, with the kisses, the marching steps, the rock and roll, and my theories and analysis and daily work in geopolitics for Quebec, for Canada, for the 63, and extending it to NATO is worth trillions. That's why a lot of it I do not disclose fully. It has to be, of course, properly discussed with high-ranking NATO security members, the generals of NATO member countries, and of course has to be discussed in the propositionary manner where we are integrated in the internal plateau, of course, to be interjected that now we are living in a parallel manner of what I have predicted in 2019. So just to finalize on Asperger's, it's not a mental illness, it's not a disease, it is a difference where we are less capable, less able, we're less able in it's more difficult to keep a job long term, to maintain friendship, and we have these ritual like routines, Also, we can have weird bodily movements. We can have these, I don't use the word symptoms, I use the word characteristics and traits, where we repeat. Hey, somebody put that Halloween there. See, ready for Halloween. The house is got a few, got Dracula there. Let's go say hello to Dracula. Dracula and his bride is a witch, I believe, and they have a child. I believe that's what that's meant to be. See, Dracula. And his wife, I believe, and the child. It's kind of cool, I guess. Comes ready for Halloween. And this one I like, has the rainbow on it. I'm not sure, that's from a character from a movie. And this one's pretty cool. And this one also here. See, that one also nice. And I guess the child of Dracula with a witch, good combination. Witch, I don't like to use witch and sorceress. I use priestess. I'm a priestess, priestess and a dragon. And that one's pretty cool. And This one, the flowers are pretty cool as well. So we have, of course, the wheel here. See, where gotta be pothole. Oh, here the rich can afford it to finance themselves. So this one is a green. But we need a public-private partnership, you know. And I wish I could give my anonymous friend to buy her a house here. If I would have had money right away, if I would have been a billionaire, I would have gotten her that house, which had the weeping willow. The weeping willow by the river, a house for my friend. I would have gotten her that house right away. With the weeping willow, I would have gotten her that house right away, of course, to be interjected in all the domains what we have now. So that is, of course, where we are now. And of course, construction workers, rock and roll, I hear sometimes for an hour discussing about building social housing, and it's a lot of words. Indeed, a philosopher. I am indeed a man, woman, I'm a man of many words, as well as many marching steps and lots of push-ups and kisses with it on rock and roll, parallel to just blah 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 words, you know, because there's also the construction workers, who build the houses. And the other day I was just listening to the radio, and so of course I said, of course it is the construction workers, of course, who build the houses, the construction workers who build, of course, the houses, and all the houses are built by the construction workers thereof. So that's what we got, and that's what we gotta work with. So that's Asperger's. That's being an Aspie. And that's being neurodivergent, and that's being different can cause a lot of misunderstandings. And certainly don't mean to, my Aspie generally don't mean to offend, or actually sometimes we can be very direct and straightforward, and that is just where we are now in the operational, of course, interested, of course, of whatever the. So we would have these difficulties where we can't really tell if somebody's interested in the discussion, you know. For example, picking up on social cues can be difficult. Thanks to that book, thanks to my anonymous friend, I had it more and more. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is, of course, a book which I've, of course, consequently made, of course, myself, or read, and that's what it is with that. And that is, of course, the simulacrum where we are now, the propositions, but it's something which the neurotypicals can consult and read as well. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and it's a great book, published in 2009, and that's the rock and roll with that, man. And Asperger's has been a curse in many ways, but it's also been turning these past years to have a little bit of a blessing. And sometimes I laugh at myself and, you know, the suffering, the struggle, being depressed. And these four main problems affect the majority of Aspies. Generally, you have these four main problems, which I need to discuss now. So the lack of friends, or losing friends. I have the solution, you know. I don't will to waste anybody's time. Life is short, and don't waste my time. With consent, hug like you never hugged before, nothing to do with it. And of course, the other proposition is that it's, for me, it's friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only now. Friends with benefits only. So if it is friends with benefits only, that's about exchanging massages and taking care of the body, and whether you're working out, training, exercising. I go often to my second home, Mount Royal, to the river, and I'm here in Hawk Island, Montreal, which I think I haven't left for sure since COVID, February 2020, so at least 6 years since I haven't left the island, maybe even 8. So for sure I left, because I crossed Canada coast to coast summer 2017. So that would mean that at least for sure more than 6 years, possibly even more than. Last time I left the island was in September 2017. So for sure 6 years or more, between 6 and 8 years since I haven't left the island of Montreal. Imagine all these years have not even left to the north or south shore. So that is a long time ago. But I bet when did we go? 3.5 years ago we went, but that's basically on the island, because it's a small island close to the island, but it's not really on the south shore. We went to the beach during COVID. Me and my anonymous friend, we went to the beach me and my anonymous friend, we went to that beach. We went to a beach and it was fun. It was fun. The beach which we have here on Ile Saint-Hélène. It was not. It's a beach with like a, well, it's a made kind of island, man-made island with a man-made. It's like a beach, and you have the water, two different water pools there, because we're surrounded by a river. It's an island. I live on the island of the Hawk, and we're surrounded by a big river, and of course that big river surrounds the island of Montreal configuratively, and consequently, as we are now, endeavored to be in all our actions and all our developments where we are now, to consequently position ourselves. And as my neurodivergent has been a journey of accepting, because I was in denial for many years. I didn't want to accept it. So lack of friends, and of course that lack of friends, I have a solution. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. It is friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only, and of course that friends with benefits only is constantly will have to be parallel to pledge your allegiance to our family, or friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance for the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, thou art family. Pledge your allegiance, thou art family. Dragonomic cadence 24/7, rock and roll for the firefighters, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers, all those involved in the production, distribution of food. It's foggy, but you can see a little bit of the island, of the Hawk here, Hawk Island, Montreal, and gonna today, because it's muddy and it's night, because I didn't bring the light, and of course I go in the dark even when it rains, but decided today just to pass by, say hello by the mountain. The mountain's there. We're gonna pass by the other side, and we're just gonna go round about it. We're just gonna go round about it and exit on the other side, or maybe go to the top and back and buy another consequential. Here, this has to be recycled, right? So this, the cup that I took earlier, recycled there, and this is the garbage. So what you do is you recycle here, because sometimes you see them mix. See, some people mix, some people put some things have to be recycled. So this is for recycling. That's why you have for the recycling there, and this is the garbage. Sometimes people mix it. I often see that people don't. You have to do it as individuals, right? You have to put the recycling in the recycling. So that is just something which I take great pride in to do. So that is just fundamentally what we have, of course, to do now. Because if I don't do it, if you don't do it, then other people don't do it, right? Other people don't do it. So that is just something which I take great care of, to do. Take great care of to do. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. So take a look. Whoever put see if you take a look, of course, in the principle, of course, to be doing like that. So taking a look at this, of course, it is, of course, the proposition, of course, where we are now, of course, to be simultaneously that is a bag. See that plastic bag? Whatever was in it, I'm assuming that it could have been put here, and that plastic bag could have been put. I'm not going to use my hand because I don't have the gloves, but just to show that the DJ is much needed, the dancing goddess army, and of course that plastic bag should have been in recycling. That's how we have to do of course to do our diligence, and of course to do our priorities, what we have, of course, to do on the situational acceptance, of course, where we are now consequently to do on the left and on the right and in the middle and in all the parts where we are endeavored to be now. So all, of course, got to be watching the car, of course, to be XYZ, and to be, of course, on the domain and cross the street prudently. See, we got 14 seconds, and then we have, of course, the lights there. So, yeah, we have to do it as individuals. That's the thing, see? Like this, I said I'm going to recycle it. So here, let's take another look. So see here is, of course, yeah, things, see that can there? That I'm going to reach for. See, that's what I'm discussing. So this one I have to recycle it, right? Because it's all recyclable. But see, that can there has to be recycled. See, this can. That goes in recycling, and that's how we need to do our parts. See? You gotta put it in recycling. Because if I don't do it and you don't do it, of course, then fundamentally it's not done, So basically, of course, it's fundamentally it's not done, and of course that is the consequential operation where we have now to be on the disclosed, of course, to be the location, and that is just how we have to do it. Please, 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 just do it. Let's recycling, garbage recycling. I'm gonna now disinfect my hand because I touched her and I got the hand sanitizer, hand disinfectant, of course, and that is, of course, the domain where we have now. And of course, I'm gonna disinfect my hands. Disinfect. See, disinfecting here. Oh yeah, with this hand sanitizer that I have here. So this is a hand sanitizer, antiseptic. I put it a bit on my hands and I got it disinfected. That's of course the disinfectant what we have now. So I'm gonna take 10 seconds to disinfect the hands because there's microbes, bacteria, germs, and microbes and bacteria germs have to be consequently where we are now. And there's of course there's a domain where we got, of course, and there we go. See, domain names where we got the plurality, and there's something where we got consequently. Because there's maybe microbes, germs, bacteria there. So I keep the protocols, the protocols of COVID. I urge all, of course, to keep the protocols of COVID that were designed for the COVID. Of course, sometimes we got those habits, and the habits. So those habits are, of course, consequential. Those habits are of course consequential. Look at a spider. A beautiful spider. Beautiful spider. Oh, we got 4 seconds. We're gonna go 4, 3, 2, 1. That's why we need it. And these flowers here, thank you for making them yellow. Thank you. Yellow flowers. That's what we gotta do, and that's what we gotta get doing with that, and that is the consequential, of course, appellation where we got it. That is just the situational awareness where we are now to be concomitantly and in the prudence with the side. Beautiful flowers, man. Thank you so much. I just love it. Just when I go up, it's just embellishing my whole journey to the mountain. It's just thank you, public workers who do the work to embellish the gardens and embellish the mountain here. Anybody want me to finance 300 times I go up and down, and I'm gonna check again. Okay, not so bad. And here's my second home, Mount Royal, where I come often, and even when it rains, sometimes I have one video, it's like a few videos that it's during the winter, it's very cold, it's a winter storm, and I'm the only one who goes to the top. And I'm not the only one because there's a flora and the fauna, and now I'm just gonna let my mane out and get that drill and get the apparatus and let my mane out because I'm about to say hello to my mistress who calls me C-U-C-K, cuck. See ya, yes, mistress, who can be quite fierce and opens her secret doors to, I guess, slim dicks like yours truly. Sometimes goes that rocket, though God is blessed, survived, and those scars and blood, sweat, and tears, and this freedom, ensuring freedom, liberty, freedom, and liberty for the North American Collective is going to be proponent to be in the understanding, of course, of the financial domains where we have to rehabilitate the North American Collective population, the citizen population, of course, of the Imperium. We're going to have, of course, to be consequently now and say my gratitude, grateful, thankful, my rent's paid and electricity bills paid and got food and got some sugar. I got coffee. It's product of Germany. I found it's really good, affordable, and it's instant though. It's not really made in Germany, but I guess they produced it there by grinding the beans. I wonder where the coffee beans were the provenance of the coffee beans are, but that's another matter. So here we are in the darkness. My mistress, the mountain, not just mine, but it's my second home here, Mount Royal, and I always love coming here. It always brings me some joy, and the air's fresh. You get to inhale it, fresh air, and be with the flora and be with the fauna, and be of course with the loving, in a fierce way of the mistress, goddess. I always got goddess today. At the table there's got to be that goddess as well, and there's Geopolitiks, and that's what we have here, you know, the Mother Nature calls me cuck. I say, well, if I love to be, then I better be one of the greatest goat, the greatest C-U-C-K goat. Some people are sports goats, like Tom Brady, and I guess Tom Brady and defense, I don't know. 21st century, Ray Lewis, maybe. Ray Lewis, Tom Brady. Parallel defense, offense, defense. Also, but from my 49ers, Bosa is pretty good. Because I'm maybe biased because I'm a Niner, but please give some charity. Owners of the sports leagues, the 4, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, it's quite something, you know. You come here, athletes on the mountain, and let's get that Dragon Army, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, mass public-private partnership, and gonna finalize on Asperger's and discuss other matters such as the 4 buildings constructions that yours truly wills to do as a mass public-private partnership across the collective North America civilizational complex. Be it, of course, that Asperger's, which I accepted about 3.5 years ago, 44 months or so during COVID, and please keep the protocols of COVID. Myself is my 4th rebirth in the past 11 plus years, 11 and a half years. I died many times, I guess, and even during COVID, I guess every day, die in many ways, but not tonight, because I gotta build the forgotten goddess temple here in this Imperial Democratic Republic of the 63 coming fusing north and south, because we're North Canada, through North strong and free. Gotta add some loving liberty, blah blah, and the south, you know, land of the free, home of the brave, and my initiative's protocol is best. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, Imperial Draconis Legionis Servitium, and I gotta salute the firefighters and the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the electricians, the plumbers, and you know, who put a little bit of lights here. And this is the main road. Usually we take by the dark road on the side, but that is just something which we have to do, and it's quite amazing here, eh? Even when it rains, you feel the nice, the niceness of the weather here. It's quite, of course, nice, eh? Come here, my second home, and that is, of course, just the life-affirming domain here on the mountain, and that is, of course, just the mountain on the XYZ factor where we got to be and where we live now in this multiplicity of domains and libertas and securitas, and gotta get it on that rock and roll, and always singing for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, electricians, the truckers on the road, eh? As I mentioned at the beginning, commencement of this vlog, marching work, which I do, I've done for years and years and years, and on YouTube, you know, documenting my rebirths, my suffering, pain, struggle, breakdowns, financial crisis now, I guess. But hey, I got that hope, and see those angles on the trees, maybe not that much. So of course the aspects of the Aspiness and Asperger's, again, being that it is a neurodivergence. See how many less people come. Just gonna interject a bit. So what we notice, and in for years and years and years in my videos coming here to my second home, you notice that, of course, the more it advances towards winter, and by the time it's winter and snowy, although some people come for that snow here, we have the great patinoire. We have a skating rink, public skating rink, which everybody can come if you got skates. If not, you can rent them there. And of course here you can slide, eh? The Public Works city finances that. Is really cool. But sometimes it's a big snowstorm and it's me and maybe I see a truck, public workers, and they go, hello, you crazy. you know, it's me, and sometimes it's just me coming. And you see how, because of the weather, so it's less and less. If it would have been like June, July, August, or of course spring, summer, March, April, May, June, July, August, those 4 months, it would have been full here. And a hot day without rain, without, of course, rain, there would be so many people coming here and jogging and going about their business now. But of course, you see how it's really kind of almost, I don't know if there's anybody really but me and the flora and the fauna. And usually we go in the darkness, but now because it's slippery and because it's foggy and slippery, I'm just gonna not act like Superman, because I'm a human being, man, woman, androgynous, 50-50, woman, man, woman, and because it's slippery, and my boots, military grade boots, are not that good for if I go internal. But in other videos, of course, I go right by the darkness in the forest. But I guess you can see a little bit of that darkness here as we go. It's very foggy, very, very foggy. Fog on the island, man, the mist. Island in the mist makes me think of a little bit of a horror movie, and triggering a bit of that past life reincarnation. And I was under the command generalship of taking orders from Vlad the Impaler, with all this forest on the mountain here, quite eerie, and don't want to discuss that past life too much, because that's for horror nightmare movies. But not that we have now discussion on autism and Asperger's. It's something which I have to conclude and say that I am part of the half of population of Aspies who are unofficially diagnosed. But for years and years and years, I've been diagnosed in a way, and by fellow citizens who have experience working with people with autism and Aspies, and working in the healthcare system as well. And I've been semi-diagnosed, I'm officially, semi-officially part diagnosed in many ways, So it has been a journey of working to build the bridges, because again, I don't have antagonistic feelings and feelings that are negative or against you, the neurotypicals. Yes, I did lose jobs, and I had many jobs during COVID. I had many jobs, many jobs during COVID, and many jobs during COVID which I had, and that is just something which I had, of course, many jobs, but I lost them. I lost them, most of my jobs, all of them, basically, unless they were a few months contract. But most of the jobs I lost after 4 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, few days, most of the jobs I lost. And many Aspies, we have those problems. Now I'm going to discuss just the problems that Aspies face. The Aspies face certain problems, and of course those Aspies face those problems when we are, of course, to interject over the domain where we have the plurality, of course, of knowledge, and the domain, of course, of the interactions and the aforementioned or pursuit, where we are now to see all the civilizational domains, interconnectedness in parallel to the life-affirming matters, where we are now to say that we are different but not bad, evil, negative, demonic. I'm not a disease, and Asperger's is not a disease. I've been called that. I remember the whispers, it hurt, but I just said ignorance is no. I'm myself not perfect. I have ignorance. I have in certain things. I'm an Aspie, so socially these dynamics, I have to work on them constantly, I know, but that's just what I am. I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, and I am hyper vigilant, and I'm gonna play that D coast to coast, and we're gonna fuse the RCMP and the FBI. We're gonna get rid of the border. We're gonna create a Dragon Army, aka Imperial Integrated SSD Legion Coast to Coast Ocean to Ocean, with the DGA Dancing Goddess Army, the Integrated Imperial Dance Legion, of course, to dance for the environment and education for the environmental aspects. So here, of course, it's a very foggy day. Foggy, very foggy, very foggy. And of course it is something that you have to be aware of. I saw somebody passing. Somebody passed by me. So I guess we are tiny Aspie minority, and tiny minority who come here even when it's Not the great weather for some, although I don't mind the rain and storms and thunder and lightning. And I'm smiling now. I have a joyous disposition. I'm just stressed financially, but you know, I gotta say my gratitude. And hey, paid my rent for September, paid my electricity bill, and got some food, got some coffee, and got that interjection appellation to all the characteristics ones we have now, of course, for the domain and the motives, of course, to be congruently and concomitantly, of course, to have all the domain names where we have, of course, in the plurality of our, the interjection where we got now to be disposition, of course, to certain fundamentals of our divergence, with which we have to build the bridges by action and concrete, of course, awareness that when I discuss with somebody, it's probably part of the 99% of neurotypicals, and thus to build bridges we have to understand each other fully, and then reconciliation between Aspies and the 99% of neurotypicals, because the world is made usually for neurotypicals, but we have a lot to contribute to the table. We put a lot of good and kindness and compassion by action. Compassion by action, compassion by action, compassion by action and service. The motto, one of the mottos in Latin of the empire is Draconis Imperium Legionis Servitium, which is the dragon empire, the legions serve, or the dragon legions, the empire serve. It could be either vice versa, either or. It's kind of very similar. The dragon army or the dragon legions, the empire serving the empire, right, of the 63, or coalescingly in the formulation of the transatlantic NATO integrative aspect. So we gotta build bridges, whether small bridges, big. So it's kind of 4 categories of bridges which we Aspies have to build, construct with the neurotypicals. Kind of like when you order coffee, order fries, small, you might order a small coffee or small fry, medium-sized fry or coffee, large coffee or fry, or you might order extra large. So within those four, you might order different ones, of course, where we got to the appellation, of course, to order those small cup of fry. Correction. But it's actually sometimes it's kind of like in a cup, but it's not. You can order small fries or coffee, mediums, coffee or fry, large coffee or fry, or extra large. Within those 4 categories, that's kind of the bridges which we have to build ourselves, you know. So of course, because we have to build those bridges, that's how we have to construct them, and it has to be, of course, in the reciprocal manner. So of course, in that reciprocal manner is something which we have, of course, to build. So of course, that is the domain where we have to build those bridges together. So building those bridges required a fundamental aspect of configuration, of working with our strengths and accepting the difficulties and the weaknesses which Aspies have, and counterbalancing and reconciliation for the greater good, because I am for the greater good. And although Aspies, we have the 4 main problems parallelly, the lack of friends, it's for me, I got the solution, you know, friends with benefits only. Of course, the other solution for unemployment, of course, well, Aspies, you are some Aspies who are multi-millionaire billionaires. How about financing? And thank you to that Aspie who last year around this time exactly donated yours truly $25.44. Donated yours truly $25.44. Donated yours truly $25.44. Donated yours truly $25.44. And of course, that was, of course, the donation which we have, of course, to getting those manners, of course, fundamentally for the aspects and the propositions where we are now, of course, in all these appellative, of course, instances where we know the knowledge and the information available that our brain is different, and thus we have to work consequently in all the domains for the individual and for the collective in the fundamental integrative public-private partnership aspect. So those are the problems. Lack of friends, high depression and suicidal rates. It's about 9 times higher, eh? Depression and suicidalness. I was depressed, I was suicidal for quite a few years, and crossing Canada coast to coast, 2017, summer 2017 was the event that transformed, completely changed my life. And ever since that time, I've been taking it. I've been grateful, and I've been putting extra work, especially in the geopolitical analysis, although my work predates 2017, days before my contribution cooperation with CSIS on national security matters and XYZ other security forces and the RCMP and what have you. And of course my ideas, theories, protocols for the North America Collective, where we are to fundamentally have, of course, and be of course of that same inclination where we are the neurotypicals and parallel with the neurodivergence for the greater good together. So also lack of employment. So it's hard, of course, for us to maintain long-term employment. Sometimes it's 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, whatever the case may be. So maintenance of long-term employment, it is, of course, something which we have, of course, to be in the dynamic, in the dynamic. So, of course, that is something which is fundamental, an aspect that we have a higher suicidal and depression rates because of self-harm, isolation, and, of course, losing friends. And parallel with that is also the very high dropout rate. Now, I have a high school diploma, but it's about 8 times higher for Aspies. The dropout rate is way higher. So Aspies will drop out of high school at a higher rate and higher education. Now, I don't remember, but my life prior to winter 2014, January-ish, February-ish 2014. That's a long time ago, still more than 11 and a half years ago. But I have a high school diploma, and I do have the high school diploma. I do have it. And I have, of course, that case in time where the high school diploma has to be, of course, concomitantly, of course, to all the appellative integration where we got now, of course, I dropped out of college. I did not attend higher university. I did, for I guess, have some documents there that I did have some, but it's not clear. I dropped out. Basically, I dropped out. I didn't pursue higher education. I went, but I dropped out of college, and that's about rock and roll. So that is just basically where we are, of course, to be disposed in all the solutions where we live now. So that is just the fundamental aspect where we got, of course, to be transmissive and, of course, to be influential about. Here is the headquarters of our empire coming. Let it be the Democratic Imperial Republic, and, of course, beautiful flowers. Just beautiful. Look at that. Public Works, thank you. See, it's very foggy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Look at that. Just so gorgeous. These are just so good to the touch. I just love you, love you, love you. Wow, just very nice, man. This is our headquarters. I want to be buried in the back of here, where we're gonna build we're gonna build a house, pyramid, house of the dragon. And of course, those are the domains, of course, to be doing with that. And that is something which we're gonna have to be rock and rolling, of course, in all the aspects, in all the plurality where we are. There's a beautifulness, and that is, of course, just the domain here, plurality. Look at these beautiful flowers in just gorgeous yellow. So that is just nice. Look at that. So here at the back of the Belvedere, I want to be buried, and every 11 years send me to the city of the pyramids, and the city of the pyramid, of course, for the transgressive. But of course, every 11 years, of course, we gotta get doing on that, rock and roll with that. And that is something which they have, of course, to do. And they got, of course, this beautiful space here where we got to be on the knowledge, of course, that it is the domain, and where we have, of course, fundamentally to get on those doings. And we got that rock and roll here, man, So that is something what we gotta go do, man. Here it is. I just love coming here. Sometimes I even come here during the winter, Even the winter time, we gotta get doing on that. Even winter time I come here, So that is something what we gotta get doing. Even winter, you can't see it. You can't really see it. Oh, yeah, it's all foggy. I wanted to show you I come often here, so you kind of see it. Wow, maybe. Is the pyramid, see? Pyramid. There's no pyramid there. There is, but you can't see it because it's foggy. Anyway, so we're going to pursue the discussion, and of course the discussions are, of course, going to turn, of course, from Asperger's to, of course, the neurodivergent manner, which we are, of course, providing, the situational awareness where we are now for the domain, where we have, of course, this is just gorgeous, this is just gorgeous here. Look at that. That was just gorgeous, and that was just the appellative where we got, and that was just something where we have to be now, consequently, in the domain, and all, of course, the affirmative action where we are now, to the plurality of all these engagements. And here we can't go inside, but it's something which we have to do, and the plurality, of course, of all the This is a gorgeous tree. It just needs so much color inside that it needs, of course, to be a little bit of more color with that, and that is just something which we have to get doing with that, and that is something which we're gonna get on that go, of course, to get it now and get on that plurality and that method, of course, of being grateful and appreciating these beautiful flowers, and this beautiful chalet, which is, of course, yeah, and you know I love those yellow flowers, so, oh yeah. Can't go wrong with yellow flowers on that. So here we are, want to be buried at the back of Belvedere there. And every 11 years send my body and what remains to the pyramids. 11 years in Hampton, New Jersey with Papa Crowley, Alistair Crowley for the fool. And of course, another for that is of course to send it to the back here and city of the pyramids and to Papa Crowley, and I gotta find my birth certificate. Maybe I was born in the pyramids, city of the pyramids. Maybe I was born underneath the Pentagon. Maybe I was born here on the island of Montreal. I know that I died here on the island and I'm being reborn here. Nothing that I will to go back to. New habits, fitness, rock and roll, sports and fitness. And of course the other dynamics is where we are now. To be categorically in the fundamental aspects where we are now. To be fundamentally in the import-export and of course the appellation, of course, where we are now. So it is something where we are, you know. So that is just the fundamental aspects, you know. So that is, of course, the Concordiate and the appellation, of course, to be. Gotta watch it for the car. Gotta move out of the way for the car so that they see you and do the pause and make it, of course, on the go. And that is something which we have to look left and right, because you know the cars, and sometimes they go there to the antennas, and they got, of course, that antenna where we are now, and that is, of course, just the plurality where we are now, to be consequentially where we got the domains and the appellatives, of course, domain where we got, of course, concordantly to be safe from the cars and from the cities, and that is just, of course, the appellative integrative aspect of the civilization's privileges when we are in the public, to be concordant, to ensure our safety and other safety, you know, not to be overly Stasi, but Stasis are gone. We got to ensure and security in the public. So, of course, all that domain is something where we have, of course, now to appellate and to be, of course, in all the integrative matter where we are consequently and prudently involved in all the domains where we have now to be aware of all the simultaneous privileges and rights and responsibilities vis-a-vis all other citizens as we are in the public sphere. So basically, for example, here, stay to the right side as much as you can, and then stay to the other side, and stay to the other side. That is just consequentially the involvement, of course, in the prudence where we are now, to be on the consequentially involved with all that civilizational aspects where we got now to be, you know. So all that, of course, simultaneous aspects where we got to be individuals and sovereigns and collective, you know, and that is just something where we have to that is just consequently where we are now, and that is just the appellative where we are now, you know. So that is also something when we got to get it on the go. So yeah, so now we're just gonna finalize on Asperger's and autism, and we got, of course, all the consequential when we got, and that is also something when we got to get doing with that, and that is just, of course, all the simultaneous aspects. So that is something where we have to be, you know. So that is just now, man. It's just living now, you know, and that is just something where we live now, and where we're gonna be living for tomorrow. I hope in better days for myself financially, with some friends with benefits and massage, and of course that is all this advancement which I had made, tremendous advancement, with all the rejection, all the isolation, you know, all that rejection, isolation. It's quite a journey, but isolation is something Aspies we encounter lots, eh? So I'm speaking in a way, I don't speak, of course, for the whole Aspie community, but of course Aspies we encounter that. And now that it's raining a bit hard, I'm gonna kind of go to the down and then finalize the problems we encounter is also lack of friends, high depression, suicidal rates, and of course high dropout rates and high unemployment. Unemployment for Aspies stands at a very, very, very high elevated rate. Totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable that it's 80%. 4 out of 5 Aspies are unemployed at the present moment in time, and myself included. And for many, many years, I had employments, I had jobs. It's just losing them constantly, and only a few days, a few weeks, and losing, of course, the problems what we got, of course, for the solution. And of course, that is something what we got, you know, to work on. So problems and solutions, friends with benefits, and all that domain is something what we got to get it on the go. So all that solutive of aspects is, of course, something where we got the consequential prudence, of course, to be. And of course, so that is, of course, the appellate information what we got, and that is, of course, something which we got, of course, the domains, and to be, of course, in the plurality where we got, and that is just, of course, the circumstantial position where we got to be now, of course, in all the life-affirming matters as I descend from the mountain. That now I'm going to switch to geopolitics. So leave the baggage at the door, please. We're entering the world, my kingdom, my domain, geopolitics. That is my kingdom, my realm, geopolitics. And of course, I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I have proof. And of course, the proof is, of course, categorically that I have predicted what's happening now in consequential matters. Of course, all the life-affirming forces, which are, of course, now transducive and inclusive, of course, to be in all the domain and all the pluralities of all the civilizational context of today, that we are a North American complex, that is a civilizational complex, which we're not, remember, we're not totally divorced, but we are, correct, distinct, dedie, double D's, distinct but not divorced from Western civilization. So keep in mind that I am a philosopher, artist, athlete, North American, fundamentally. A North American, fundamentally, right? Because all I know is North America. Fundamentally, in essence, I am a North American, Quebecer, Canadian, and of course, although we are part of the Western civilization, we're part of where we are distinct, not divorced. So, of course, my theories, propositions are for the North American collective civilization. So all, of course, the domain and, of course, all the situational aspects, which we are endeavored to be today and we are endeavored to be tomorrow, that is just something where we have, of course, to be in the consequential and the prudence of the appellations where we got to be conclusively now. And, of course, for the time being, it is the present 2025. It is September 2025, September 25th to be precise, and we're going to go back in time, of course, that back in 2019 I have predicted, of course, something which we have, of course, to be appellated, of course, and to be about. So that is just something what we have, of course, to be, and of course to be simultaneously in equilibrium and all that domain where we have to essentially, of course, in essence, to be doing, and of course to do and infuse, of course, that we have, of course, the situational awareness that we have today to be all the consequential appellations is that we have, of course, to be ourselves in this context. So that is something which we have, of course, and that is something which we got to be now together. And that is where we position ourselves to construct a new civilizational complex and appellation in the integration and mannerisms that we are now. That this constitutes the proof that I predicted what's happening now, which can be dated up to 2019, October 17th to be precise. I posted the first video in regards to the creation of the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, which of course is the General War Training System, which is a total integrative body training system, which I consequently created to go hand in hand with the World Workout Training Program system. So I created it's called the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, and of course in creation, of course, to be in the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, and that is just the appellation where we got now to be conclusively and to be, of course, in all the manners where we are suffused ourselves to be aware that I did not predict the current deterioration of relations with the United States. So although I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration of World War III, I did not predict our deterioration with the United States. So that has to be also integrally understood fully. So, because I have to clarify that I did not predict that Canadian-US relations will deteriorate to such a degree. And it gives me goosebumps since August 1st, of course, we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat by the Trump administration, who positions itself that due to the fact that we have not adequate coordination. Now, coordination implies cooperation. Cooperation does not necessarily imply coordination. When you coordinate, you usually take joint action, or it's action-based, right, with a verb action. And of course, cooperation, you can just exchange information and knowledge. So since August 1st, I get goosebumps when I discuss it. The United States administration, we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. This is serious, eh? Serious. And due to the fact that we have not coordinated, which implies coordination implies cooperation as well, with the security forces of the United States, such as the DEA, basically, I guess, in relation to the RCMP, which is kind of like the FBI, Federal Police Force, in regards to the border, in regards, of course, to the growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, which, of course, our RCMP just last year dismantled locally in Canada the biggest ever super lab in Canadian history, dismantled the biggest ever super lab in Canadian history. Just last year, 25th of October, it's going to be a year in a month, so it's been exactly 11 months. Did you know the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in Canadian history, and so many doses of fentanyl overseas that it could have potentially killed the population of Canada twice over. Now imagine children dying of fentanyl by mistake, by XYZ, so that is serious. Twice transnational criminal syndicate organized group had 5 laboratories, 5 labs. That means that if one down, 4 to go. What if one is in Quebec, one is in Manitoba, one is in Nova Scotia, and one in Ontario, spread out across Canada? And the RCMP has been warning us since about 2015, as my parallel warning since 2019, that we're coming towards a World War III, that the current world order is going to end, that conflicts from the 20th century will re-emerge. That was my prediction, that conflicts from the 20th century will fundamentally re-emerge because they didn't have their final resolution, as we had here, made what I call in the North American civilizational complex the Great Linguistic Compromise. We still got work to do with our brothers and sisters, the blacks. Blacks, my neighbors included, my neighbors are also black. Of course, 13.4% of the population of Canada, United States are blacks, So my black brothers and sisters and all who come to join us here, there's still, of course, sometimes subconscious racism, subconscious discrimination against my fellow LGBTQ community, and definitely discrimination against neurodivergence, against autistics, people with autism like myself, and Aspies. Of course, there is lots of work to do in relation, myself included. I'm not perfect, far from it. My brothers and sisters who are blacks, I would definitely not give to charity or provide employment if I was in the position. And I call for the DRT to create the UEUEU, as you know, my financial theory, the debt refusion theory for the North American Collectif binationally, to get rid of a border, to fuse the RCMP and the FBI into mass finance healthcare and the rehabilitation of to a certain extent that we can. Of course, if you have 44 convictions in the past 11 years, then we're going to implement maybe Operation Dracula, maybe we're going to implement the Imperial Dracula protocols, but otherwise, fundamentally, to get the Imperial criminal rehabilitation in order for us to build the 44 tunnels, mass tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war, which it might happen any minute, because you wonder why China has increased so much of their increase in the development of nuclear warheads since about 2020 in a mass way, almost doubled in just 4 years. They mass involved themselves in building nuclear weaponry. You wonder, why is that the case in parallel to everything that's been going on since COVID? And of course, the solidification of Russia and Chinese relation due to their common interest of Ukraine and Taiwan, which of course in this matters you have to consult as NATO member countries. My theory, philosophy, which is a work tool, of course, the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance and Action, which I discussed consequently. So now, just to get back to 2019, October, I posted the first video, consequently of hundreds of videos, where I performed more than 372 sessions of my own creative workout training program system, which of course was designed, made and created, of course, to go hand in hand with such a scenario as a World War III scenario, where I have, of course, consequently to be in, of course, position that I predicted what's happening now. So my position, of course, of what's happening now, was it in the consequential that we have, of course, to be situational awareness of all the dynamics where we are now, to be integrative, of course, to be on the aspects where we got, and of course, that's the propositions that we have to put as a soluble working formula where we are now in the dynamics and the operative that we have to secure coast-to-coast torsion by fusing and by creating the two complementary fundamental public-private partnership institutions based on most of my philosophies, and of course parallel to some rock and roll of that old school 20th century, but in the 21st century, for total security service and defense and the total Dragon Army 911 North American integrated protocols for total security, total service, total defense, part of my initiative philosophies, which are fundamentally public-private partnership based, which have to be formulated in the 21st century, specifically and vis-a-vis the implementation of the DRT, the debt fusion theory. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I have predicted what's happening now. I predicted it. I have the proof, I have the video. So I did not predict, however, the deterioration of relations with the United States. That's new for me, and it's alarming because the fundamental aspect of our civilization, of North American Collective, and fundamentally between Canada and the United States, Canada vis-a-vis the United States, and the United States vis-a-vis Canada, as a number one principle when it comes to foreign policies, foreign affairs, we have, of course, to work to establish the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, security relations with each other. That's just like a constant, like the pi symbol, not the edible pi, but the pi resolutely the relation between the circumference and the ratio. So the pi symbol is an N, letter N, from N for natural, Normandy, neurodivergent, neurotypical, or neutral, the letter N. And it's like two-headed, two-faced. That's why coming of our empire will be like two-headed, two-faced. It has like one head looks like a head of a hawk, H-A-W-K. The other like a canine, dog, donkey, antelope, hyena, or some unidentifiable canine type of dog, type of earthly creature, aardvark maybe. So with it between that, so that is of course the fundamentals, and those fundamentals are of course prepositioned to those fundamentals in aspect, and those aspects of those fundamentals are of course relegated that we must. So the principle is just like the N symbol, which represents the mathematical constant of the pi symbol, which is a mathematical constant that always is 3.1416, the relationship between the circumference and the diameter and circumference of a circle. So that never changes. That is a constant mathematical number. It is the pi symbol. That's why it has that N, like two-headed N, and it always represents that number, and it's always that number, 3 times, it has to be times 3.1416. So that is the constant, the relations. But of course that relation is a fundamental aspect, of course, of the integrity and the resolutions where we got to position ourselves in an affirmative position whether you're on the right, on the left, and in the center right, center left, that you must affirm what I'm going to say next in a positive manner. You cannot negate and say no, or you cannot even say maybe. So our first interest when it comes, of course, number one interest when it comes, of course, to foreign affairs, number one interest when it comes to foreign affairs, and of course that we must work to have the best economic, social, financial, military security relations with the USA as Canadians, because of our historical common, at least it has been so for many decades since the dissolution of the British Empire. Because the British Empire lost power after the Second World War with losing territory and ground, and the partition of India and India's independence and other countries' independence. So after the dissolution of the British Empire, for more than 75 years it has been so. And because of our geographical position, more than 3/4, more than 75%. 75% of our exports go to the United States. In the current economic financial situation and problems that Germany faces and other countries are facing, the problem is because of this facing of these economic internal dynamics and problems that they're not going to be able to absorb to buy more than 5, 10, 15%, and that's going to be in a few years. And looking for other markets or our geographical position, that it's a fantasy. Most of it is a fantasy. There is some 5% which could export more than 10, but the economic engine of Europe, or Germany, is not doing so well. Britain, the Kingdom, UK, United Kingdom, Britain is not doing that well either. They also have their propositions, They also have, of course, their difficulties. Economic difficulties, and what's happening with all the problems that they have, internal, domestic problems and issues. My brothers and sisters, the European Union, they're not doing that great. So, many other countries as well, I'm well aware that economic fundamentally things have shifted, have changed drastically. I predicted what's happening now. saluting the Canadian Armed Forces right there. So my prediction dates back to 2019, and of course I predicted what's happening now generally. Not every detail by every detail by every detail, but in a general manner I have predicted. So I even have the videos online. I discussed it for years and years and years. I created a general integrated total body training system, which I'm advocating for all to be, of course, incorporated in the domain of the security forces of the armed forces. It is a simple, effective workout training program system. It requires no equipment, and of course that fundamental requiring of no equipment, that is of course just the propositions where we have now to be integrally in all the domain of the aspects of all the civilizational priorities where we are now to be in the situational awareness where we got to be in the concordiate, of course, to create this new world order by fusing Canada and the United States via my DRT. So I'm advocating for my workout to be incorporated as young as 7 years of age, and of course for the security forces, police forces, NATO member security forces, for NATO member security forces. It was made for NATO, and my theory strategies such as, of course, the North American new 911 Dragon Total Integrated Security Service Defense protocols are for North America, but it can be expanded for NATO. And the Total Mobile Defense Theory I don't discuss over much because it is detailed for binational security, and it can be expanded for NATO, but it's fundamentally for binational security and can only be discussed with David McGinty, with Pete Hegseth, and Pam Bondi, and Tulsi Gabbard, and members of CSIS, and all the security service apparatus of the North American Collectif, plus of course NATO, the NATO complex. So that is of course just the fundamental aspects where we are to position ourselves today in this domain, and the plurality of course of all the aspects where we are of course now to live by, and of course to be integrated in all the civilizational aspects where we live in concordia to all the things that are transpiring across the world, and of course to be aware of the changes that have occurred since, which have totally ended the past geopolitical world, and the past geopolitical world passed of course with the economic world, which of course has completely derailed and has completely changed the fundamental order which we had of course for many decades. So the fundamental order which we had for many decades has been totally changed and derailed in many ways, where we got fundamental derailment of the aspects of civilization, where because due to the concordiate of course of invasion of Russia, Ukraine, and my prediction was very more academic. There was a lot of academic, scholarly, political analysis, but the fundamental, or one of the principal aspects, was that due to the fact that many nation state civilizations were not able to completely resolve their problems from the 20th century. If you look at the world, what has been happening is fundamentally many conflicts from the 20th century, especially during the Cold War period, have re-intensified, such as Russia-Ukraine, right? Russia-Ukraine. That is a conflict which dates from the 20th century. Israel-Hamas. Hamas is an organization which was founded in 1980s. Only more than 2 decades later, they took power after the Gaza civil war. Fatah was an organization. They fought a small civil war for a few weeks, and they took power in like June, July 2007. Hamas, but they were founded 20 years earlier, in the 80s during the Cold War. Of course, Pakistan, India is another 20th century unresolved conflict, and another conflict which of course is China and Taiwan. Because Taiwan, the ROC, Republic of China, who was ruled by a military junta by a one-party state for many decades, under martial law for many decades, only late 89, I believe, in 1996, they had their first elections. The Republic of China, Taiwan, also known before the turn of the millennium as Formosa. That's an unresolved conflict, and People's Republic of China always states that Taiwan is a renegade province. That's the official position. It's a renegade province. They should not be considered independent. I remember the DMAA, which I'm now going to discuss. But once again, I'm alarmed, and we have to be mindful that the RCMP warned us since 2015, about more than 10 years now, especially during COVID in the past 4 years, since 2001, that there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups establishing themselves in Canada. And just last year, we Canadians, our RCMP, which is the federal police, dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab with weapons and munitions and more than 90 million doses of fentanyl, which could have killed the population of Canada twice over. Just that one super lab. That's why I'm designated this fentanyl. More and more fentanyl for me is a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense from a drug dealer perspective who wants to buy 44 cars, 4 mansions, 3 planes. Because if they're dying, people who use fentanyl, I think that's been tampered with, you know? It's like tampered and subjected to a tampering, so that it's more like a bioweapon. I love these. So it's more like a bioweapon. This is really great. Just so nice here, how the colors is quite a perfect. So of course, being that it's the fentanyl is so deadly, so potent, of course, it is something that, of course, makes me wonder if it's not really a covert bioweapon. And because of the DMA, direct military assistance in action, which is a theory, philosophical theory, which has its consequences in real life. That means that if we take, and we have taken, as we have taken in Ukraine, by military assistance, non-action, you got to get acquainted. It's my theory, philosophy, and of course it is a work tool for us to be incorporating it, because of course it requires deliberation, just like the motto of NATO is. Animus in consuelo liber, that's Latin for a mind unfettered in deliberation. Animus in consuelo liber is a mind unfettered in deliberation, so that's the motto of NATO. And of course, consequently, the NATO member countries, we have, of course, the plurality, of course, to be that they have the discernment for us to discern this DMAA, and of course incorporate it at all levels of discernment thereafter, where do we continue or we take action or assistance in the future because of the C of the consequences, which can be that due to our assistance, military power, governments, exterior governments outside of NATO, that they take direct military, not military, but covert, they support transnational criminal organized groups to harm the population by spreading, for example, fentanyl consumption. Fentanyl for fomenting economic crisis, for fomenting discord, fomenting riots internally in NATO. And another consequence of the DMAA is potentially which is, of course, clearly it is so, the solidification of Russia and China. China and Russia solidifying their relations because and due to the DMAA, direct military assistance and action. The direct military assistance and action is, of course, fundamentally has a consequence, and whether we take it or not in the future, as we have in, of course, Belgrade in 1990s, that was action. It could be both. Or for example, Canada providing munitions, helmets, of course, weaponry, tanks to Ukraine. Now this DMAA has nothing to do with providing humanitarian aid. So you have humanitarian aid such as sanitation pads, food, shelters, baby formula, and of course shampoo and health products. Doesn't fall under the DMA. DMA has to be military and directed to affect the counter-opposing military force. I don't want to get too philosophical, technical, scholarly, academic about it, but to fundamentally basically assist another country which is non-NATO member countries, conflicts between non-NATO member countries, but NATO member countries intervening, that creates an adversarial force which could potentially use their secret police and financial capabilities and espionage capability to harm NATO member countries. The justification to harm internally in NATO member countries, Canada, United States, and other 30 member countries. Right? That's the DMAA. It's a work tool. It's a frame of reference. It's a protocol for whether to assist or not. Because you know it's only for SSD. My theories protocols, SSD since COVID. SSD, Security Service and Defense. Security Service and Defense. Security Service and Defense. Security Service and Defense. Internal. DDD. And the Total Mobile Defense Theory can be adjacently interposed for NATO. It's made binationally for Canada, US. I started constructing it, building it, and developing it since I crossed Canada coast to coast. And of course, that was the motive that I had my rebirth. I guess I'm on my 4th rebirth, but the DMAA is a philosophy. It has to be incorporated as a philosophy. Has to be incorporated as a philosophy. Of course, that philosophy has to be incorporated thereof. So that incorporation of the philosophy is, of course, the adversarial positions that, of course, the DMAA can cause is of course this point in time where of course this adjacent action is of course something where we have to relegate of course all the informative aspects of the NATO plateau, and this NATO of course plateau we got to get it on the go because it has to formulate the integral aspect of total security, total service, total defense via the CIT as well. So there's an integration theory and the DRT to create the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dancing Goddess Army and the Dragon Army, which are fundamentally for SSD and the environmental education and action. So the DMAAA is a work tool. A frame of reference is a theory. It is all of that. It is a theoretical philosophical framework to incorporate in NATO member countries to deliberate and to decide according to the DMAA's principles that if we do take DMAA, there could be potential consequences. Potential consequences such as transnational criminal syndicate organized groups organizing themselves internally, of course, to get the proposition and, of course, to get on that go with that, of course, to fundamentally requiem. And, of course, the requiem thereof is, of course, the fundamental aspects of all the administrative forces where we are now to be congregation in all the developmental aspects where we are to be assisting or taking action, that it has to be in accord whether we do take assistance, where we do take action or we don't, because of the C, the consequences. So DMAA stands for direct military assistance and action, and in C, the parenthesis is potential consequences vis-a-vis us taking direct military action or not taking action at all, or remaining basically only humanitarian action. So humanitarian is not incorporated, is not something that directly affects adversarially the other military, which can be, of course, a military of Russia, because we provided assistance to Ukraine that could kill Russian soldiers. So this provides, of course, the adversarial impact, and this adversarial impact is, of course, something which consequently we have, of course, to be on the side, of course, where we are now in all the domains, and all, of course, these civilizational aspects are, of course, fundamentally that we are now, of course, in the domains, and all, of course, the priority where we got now to be, of course, on the affirmation, of course, that we are consequently to be all of the domains where we got to be now assistance, and of course to be on the consequential prudence of all the administrative facts and the labels thereof where we are now. It is, of course, something where we have, of course, to position ourselves for future action or even inaction. Not taking action is, of course, a course of action in many ways. It's not a course of action, it's more a refraining of action, right? So that refraining of action is a possibility of doing just that because of the C, of the consequences. So basically, it is deeper, more complex than that fundamentally. However, this fundamental complexity could be resumed to whether we take action or not because of the C, consequences. So yes, it is scholarly academic, it is new. I develop it, I put it online because although it's worth millions and trillions and there's some secrets of it which I do not totally divulge, but fundamentally, is that a dragon? Dragon army, where you at? Pledge your allegiance, that's a fact. So as we're going to transform the North American NORAD NATO complex into the Dragon Public-Private Partnership Army for total SSD, that DMAA has to be as a priority number one, complex as it is, and with the simplicity as it is, whether to take action or not, it has to be from now on a work tool. It is a philosophy, it is a work tool, and it's something which we have to fundamentally do together, you know, because it has certain aspects, and those aspects are, of course, whether to assist or not assist. So this assistance or inassistance or not taking action or action is the fundamental deliberation where we do it or not, take action or assist. Because even assistance, like Canada assisted and Ukraine is not part of NATO. Article 5, as a response collective action against an attack against a member of NATO member countries invokes automatically, Article 5 comes into invocation and action. So Article 5 was only invoked and put into practice and action once. 9/11 was the one and only time in the 75-year history when NATO invoked Article 5. Never ever has been an invocation of Article 5. Article 4, yes, which is coming to deliberate. And that deliberation, of course, animus inconsuelo liber, is, of course, the deliberation where we have, of course, to do now. So animus inconsuelo liber is, of course, the deliberation where we have, of course, this maximization of deliberation where we are in concordiate, and that concordium has to be plurally and, of course, integrated in all its fundamental aspects. So that's the philosophy, and that's why I put it online with a passion, my Aspie intellectual capabilities, which are mostly mathematical, above average, I guess, mathematics, and not so good with computers, although in the parallel life I built supercomputers, super satellites, microchips, and of course all the fundamental aspects where we got to be now in all the life-affirming matters where we go do that Googling of parallel life. In the year of darkness, it is the year 2029, on November 24th. I built satellites, supercomputers, microchips, gadgets, antennas, and smartphones. But for years and years and years, I had it rough because in my parallel life, I'm also an Aspie. So I lived what I lived in this life: rejection, isolation, suffering, depression, and lack of friends until I got a good contract in that parallel life with others. And I spent most of my life in between 4 countries: Canada, Germany, United States, and Israel. Because in that parallel life, Israel is part of NATO, as before October 7th, you know, that I had before October 7th, because technically a country cannot join NATO while it's in a war, right? But before October 7th, I had advocated for Israel and Mexico simultaneously to join NATO. So now we have to find a resolution. We have to find a resolution, I guess, releasing the hostages and making an agreement, an agreement, peace treaty, ceasefire, peace treaty, agreement, and then maybe we could see if we can restart the Genesis 33 protocol. The Genesis 33 protocol, the Genesis 33 protocol was the, before October 7 was my philosophy call for simultaneously for Israel and Mexico to join as respectively the 32nd and the 33rd, because now we have the 32nd, we have as of course in Sweden. Sweden is become last year the 32nd member of NATO. Look at these. Is that Halloween? 31st of October. I love Halloween. Love it, love it, love it. I love how it's like arranged, you know, just a row of them. So of course, fundamentally, back to finalize the DMAA. It is a working tool. It is a reference, and of course, beautiful yellow flowers here. Always get a little bit of that smile when I see these yellow flowers. So of course, the DMAA is consequently, of course, to be the direct military assistance and action is something which, of course, we got to get the dynamics, some to put it, to incorporate it in the future action or in actions where we take now Concordia and where we are now. So of course, this Concordia, this of course resolution, this philosophy, this theory, this work frame of reference which has to be incorporated from now on is really worth gold, eh? But I put it online. I don't get all the details such as I can because it's binational, national security matters and NATO security matters. Fundamentally binational is the total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, as I call for Operation Northern Scorpion. Of course, the creation of the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions where we are now, fundamentally in the plateau, and of course all the domain where we got of course to be, and of course all the appellations where we are now, to change the topic of discussion and address and discuss, I guess, one more take on the DMAA before I go on again to say that as Canadians we have to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with the United States, trade-wise, commercial-wise, security-wise, because fundamentally we have our geography, common history, and common destiny. So that common destiny calls us, of course, for the large, of course, to be in the proposition and suppositions that we have, of course, now to direct all the affirmed forces of life and action, the public and the private, towards coalescing and fusing via mass public-private partnership, which is, of course, implementing my debt fusion theory, citizen integration theory, and democratic fusion theory in order to create the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, and in order, of course, to be proponent to what, of course, all the life-affirming matters have been, and the matters, of course, where we dictate, or of course, where we have to be resolutely and complementary in all the relations where we have now in the great North American civilizational complex, which is an emergent civilization that is not divorced from Western civilization, but is distinct because it's made from different peoples, nations, and it is a new civilization compared to the other civilizations which have a more ancient history. Just like freedom is new under the sun, Mr. King Solomon, freedom is new. Freedom has to be ensured, and we have to rehabilitate our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. The Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, we're gonna have to do it. I guess if you have in the past 11 years 44 criminal convictions in the past 11 years, then if you have 44 criminal convictions in the past 11 years, then you would consequently know that we're gonna have to implement Operation Dracula in in the proposition, we're gonna have to implement Operation Dracula instead. We're gonna have to implement Operation Dracula instead. Imperial Dracula protocols instead. Imperial Dracula protocols instead. But other than that, we also have to rebuild our infrastructure, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and build a total integrated imperial fortress, which I'm going to discuss in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. The Imperial Dragon Citizens Imperial Dragon Legion Fortress for the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3, which we're going to have mass barracks. In every state, we're going to have one big dragon's lair and 3 types. Dragon's lair, and then in the big cities, dragon lairs, and individual household of each dragon army unit is going to be an individual dragon's lair as I'm heading back to my small dragon lair. And before I go on to the DRT, I just want to say, finalize on what I was saying, that of course North Americans and the fact that Canada is designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, and the motive why the United States administration has increased tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel is because and due to the fact that there have been these problems of crossing of fentanyl. So crossing of fentanyl into the United States, and of course the problem of drug super labs. Look at that beauty. Drug super labs, she's not just gorgeous, of drug super labs is given there. On the black and white in the White House administration government from from August 1st, 2025, as we are since August 1st designated. It gives me goosebumps when I mention it. This week, it's totally new for me as well, and it's totally new and horrible for the 21st century that Canada were designated by the United States as an unusual, an extraordinary threat. Unusual, an extraordinary threat. Imagine an unusual and extraordinary threat to the United States. My brothers and sisters, my fellow American people, because I'm an American as well. I am an American. I'm a Canadian American. I'm not American. As much as I try to be a world citizen, I'm lacking certain fundamentals of experience in other places in this lifetime, in the 21st century, you know. We're being reborn here as novus civis of the Dragon Empire Kingdom, Imperial Democratic Republic, and it's a universal revolutionary centrist. My centrism is North American centric and pro-labor and love, universal revolutionary based. And we have, of course, to concord all the civilizational problems which we have, of course, in the dictums, and that is just what we have to do together. So that is just the fundamentalness of these geopolitical theorizing philosophies. And as a philosopher, as a geopolitical theorist and androgynous artist with Asperger's, who has these theories, propositions, protocols, which I call all to fundamentally support. So as Canadians, as paradoxically vice versa, for my brothers and sisters in the 50 states vis-a-vis us, whether you're on the left, right, and center, or center, right, center, left, I'm not discussing far left and far right here, because those are more extremes, right? Although they exist, but we have to discern what's far left and what's far right. It's not that, sometimes it's pretty clear and straightforward. Otherwise, just saying he's a fascist, he's a communist, or he's far right, he's far left, it's not necessarily the case. We have to discern a little bit, So my centrism, though universal revolutionary centrist, pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrism, is North American centric, however, as a new distinct civilizational collective that we are. Even Mexico, Haiti, Dominican Republic is part of North America in many ways of our collective. Although it's the binational affair, as in my strategies first and foremost, then they can be expanded to include Mexico, Haiti, and Jamaica, and other countries as well. They can be expanded to do so. But however, for that time being, it is where we are now with the realities of today, hoping for a better world and world peace for tomorrow. So that is, of course, the proposition where we are now, and the fundamental aspects, which I'm now going to change. And I guess I can go through here. There's no clear demarcation of not being. Oh no, this because it went down, or what's going on? I guess so. So I'm gonna just cross here and wait for the car to pass, and then I'm gonna pass safely by the side. I guess because that went down, I guess it fell, but you're not supposed to enter there. That's what that says in French. Here we got the French state. Quebec, I would vote no in the referendum, but the only thing that I would probably like is that we would get rid of the king, and we would be no more mention of the king of England or his heirs in Quebec if we would be an independent nation states, because that's internal Canadian affairs. So our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, democratic, security-wise, trade and business relations with the United States. That's a constant. You cannot change that. And it will be so until we get a world federation, just like in the Fifth Element movie. But today it is so, and it will be so for time present. But the United States vis-a-vis us, it is the same principle. You have to work as your foreign policy. If we are to have a hierarchy, not domestic affairs, external affairs as the number one priority, if we have to establish a hierarchy of foreign affairs principles, that is what it is for Canada vis-a-vis the United States and for the United States vis-a-vis Canada. So, of course, that complexities and that awareness, it has to be diluted in the fact that the DRT is on the table. What is the DRT? It is the debt refusion theory, which I'm now going to discuss. So, meditate on the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance and Action, DMAA, Direct Military Assistance and Action. It is not just a tool, it is a theoretical framework, it is a theory, it is a philosophy, and beautiful, beautiful, beautiful flowers there arrayed in kind of that like pink, dark pink type of rosé type of lemonade. So now the DRT, debt refusion theory, we have to incorporate it, we have to work to establish it binationally. Because we have four main problems which affect the majority of the population of both Canada and the United States. These four problems are economic, financial, commercial in nature. They are these four problems, so that's why the DRT has to be implemented binationally. It's part of the bipolar, not to be confused with bipolarity as in the psychiatric, psychological condition, but merely from a geopolitical perspective, the bipolar. When I say bipolar, I'm making the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Democratic Republican complex via implementation of the DRT, debt refusion theory, the CIT, citizen integration theory, and the DFT, the democratic fusion theory. That is consequently something which we must do together. But that has nothing to do with psychiatry. I know there's the psychological psychiatric condition of bipolarity, being bipolar. That is not the case here. This is a geopolitical perspective. This is a geopolitical strategy in actuality for fusing Canada and the United States in the Imperial Democratic Republic, that two-headed, two-faced empire, just like that pi symbol, the N, which is the constant mathematical relation between the circle and the circumference. So now that we are established and we have established that proposition and that factual awareness where we are now in consequentialness, now I'm going to discuss the DRT because we have to implement my DRT. It's actually an emergency. We could be heading towards a financial collapse, even not just Canada, United States, but we have growing problems and food bank use and growing economic problems by the day. It's been getting worse. So the four main problems are economic, financial, commercial in nature for both the United States and the United States and Canada. So these four main problems, of course, are consequently the problems where we have, of course, now to endeavor ourselves to be of a solution. So focusing on the solution is where we must focus our solution where we are now. So, of course, that is the solution that we have to focus ourselves with, because it's the DRT, which includes monetary integration theory, and monetary integration theory is, of course, the solution where we have now. So the monetary integration theory is the financial theory, which, of course, has to be implemented across the plateau, which was implemented rather in the European Union. So the monetary integration theory is the financial theory which the Europeans implemented in the 90s, because the Europeans, many countries don't have central banks like we do. Hey, they have a common central bank. The ECB is a common central bank, and of course the common central bank is, of course, that common central bank which they established in the 90s. So the MIT monetary integration theory is, of course, part of course, the strategy which includes the DRT, but inside, integrated in my theory, debt refusion theory, the DRT, which is the financial economic theory, is included the MIT, which is an economic financial theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, they destroyed and all their national central banks and the national currencies. They created the ECB in the 90s, many decades ago, more than 25 years ago, they established the ECB, European Central Bank, and they incorporated the euro. They created the euro, the common central bank. So the DRT, I got to give a shout out to an anonymous acquaintance who have gifted me for, I believe it was Christmas holidays, 24th, 25th of December. I believe it was 2018. A book which I read so many times that I written on it, Geopolitiks, and I created this theory thanks to. So in 1/3, that anonymous acquaintance, hope you get $1 million, gotta get credit for it. So gotta get credit for that. So of course the accreditation is, of course, that was the creation thereof, of course, to be in the component, of course, evaluation of the evaluational aspects where we are now, to be in all the domain, of course, and the pluralities where we are, to be effectuated, and of course the effectuation, of course, of that. Effectuation is, of course, that they have now to implement the DRT, and the creation of the DRT paradoxically to save us in many ways from maybe even global, at least North American NATO, maybe even worldwide, international financial economic Armageddon. It's a paradox. And that book, I even read it while bathing, and once I kind of wrote so much on it, and the pages I kind of put, because I bathed, and I almost kind of put, because it kind of went. I was reading and kind of dropped it a bit. In part of it, like half of it, went in water a bit, because it kind of fell on my privates. But because I was reading it while taking long baths. I usually take long bathing. Sometimes I bathe, and I was reading several times. And I think like the 4th or 5th time when I was in the bath, I kind of flipped the pages. I took it with one hand and with the other, and it kind of fell. And I kind of tried to catch it, and it kind of fell on my privates. Androgynous. So anyway, so it got damaged, so I had to get rid of it. So basically, of course, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, comes as spawn from that book. It was semi-conspiratorial in nature, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I know there were conspirators, but that book, of course, had real information about, of course, the financial system, of course, which was established in the world. And it even had ancient financial, economic, central banking related, many central banking financial relations from ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Sumeria, and of course ancient Babylon, and of course all to the present British Empire, the East Dutch Company, the East Dutch Company, of course, that's what it is with that, and that's what it is. So the East Dutch Company, something where and of course the East Dutch Company, the East Dutch Company was addressed and was semi-conspiratorial. It tied the great financial crisis that lasted from 2007, like July 2007 till about March 2010, 3.5 years. It linked it to triads, underworld criminal syndicates, because of a surname now. Surname was given Lee, so I don't know. I made some research. There is something there, but it linked to Hong Kong criminal, China's criminal underworld, the Chinese triads, the financial, because supposedly this person, and it's a real person, he had made some financial theorizing. He worked in Vancouver, BC in banks and RBC and central banks, and then he moved back in 2007, early 2007 or so. He moved back to Hong Kong, China, moved back to China. Well, Hong Kong since 1998 is now China, right? They had the British Empire had to give back Hong Kong. Hong Kong is part of China now, but it linked the financial crises and those toxic financial instruments and some financial theories which were put into practice by the banks, which supposedly were developed around, I believe it said 1999 or something like that. So for like 7 years they had flooded this with toxic financial instruments, and it was semi-conspiratorial. Now I don't know, supposedly there is some link between the surname that it was given there and the majority of the leaders of this particular triad, or triads, one of the criminal syndicate organized groups. It's not the Yakuza. Yakuza is in Japan. right? There's the Cosa Nostra, is the Italian, and often other gangs and other kids. But it was linked to the underworld criminal organizations, and this was the underworld criminal organizations, which was linked, of course, in regards was, of course, the Chinese triad. So now I don't know about that because I'm not really an expert. I guess the RCMP FBI would be able to know more about that. What I do know is that it had some real financial theorizing about central banks, and of course, that's where the DRT was kind of spawned. So I'm going to now discuss this. So the DRT includes monetary integration. We're going to take, now I'm going to explain the DRT. We're going to take all the public and the private debt. Because I got no credit card debt. I have $10,000 in debt to the RBC. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt. My 10,000, your 10,000. We're going to add it all up. We're going to add all the public private debt of Canada. We're going to convert it into US dollars. We're going to convert it into US dollars and all the money in circulation. We're going to add it because we're going to implement the DRT binationally. We're going to add it with the public private debt of the United States. All that money we're going to finance the creation of a new central bank, the Imperial Central Bank, to credit a new currency, the UE. U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE. U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE. The Universal Exchange Unit, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE. The Universal Exchange Unit, the UE. U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE. The UE. U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.Unit. The Universal Exchange Unit, the UE, is going to have the value of the US dollar. The value of the US dollar. The Universal Exchange Unit will have the value of the US dollar. The UE. The UE is going to have the value of the US dollar. The Universal Exchange Unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. The UE, this is nice. I love this. This is a great building. The Universal Exchange Unit will have the great value of the US dollar. We can call it the imperial dollar. With that money, we're going to get rid of the border, fuse the RCMP and FBI. We're going to mass finance healthcare, mass rehabilitate the population, mass build social housing with some structures implemented with the SSD, total security, total service, total defense, and mass finance the reconstruction of the highways, the bridges, and of course, with a condition to social housing for maintenance and upkeep. We're going to have regular checkup by our security service forces, integrated by the fusing RCMP and the FBI, fusing RCMP and FBI and other security forces internally. We're going to create the Imperial Police Service Forces and the Dragon Army parallel, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League with it, and the Imperial Dragon Army, officially the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, Security Service and Defense Legion, parallel to the Imperial, and in cooperation with the Imperial Police Security, Imperial Police Security Service, Imperial Police Security Service, and we're going to build these social housing and buy houses and buy places where can rehabilitate the willing homeless, rehabilitate those who will to have their rehabilitation, who are doing drug consumptions. We're going to mass finance this public-private partnership, but we're going to check regularly on the houses. We're going to have regular upkeep, regular maintenance, and we're going to work together and heal, reconcile in the North American Collectif, make this great public-private partnership together, and of course we're going to rehabilitate instantly, of course, all the rehabilitation of the forces where we are now to be congruent and to do it, of course, in concordant and all the appellations where we have now to be of all the life-affirming forces and the rebuilding of the infrastructure, the bridges. We're going to build those massive 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war, which can start, we're going to get in the the Golden Dome. We're going to put the Golden Hawk in it, the Hawk for to include Canada, United States, and we're going to improve the Golden Dome. Look at that beauty. We're going to put the Golden Dome in it, and that's what we're going to do, rehabilitate the population, the North American population's rehabilitation, and get rid of the border. We're going to do a great census, make a great census. So for a few weeks, months, we're going to create these institutions, do a great census, see who's been living here for the past 11 years, 7 years, 5 years, since COVID, see who we can give some amnesty, make it novus civis, give some rehabilitation and support us to build those 44 mass underground tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war for the continuity of the North American civilizational complex, our territory of Canada with its resources and the dynamism dynamic American people, my dynamic American people, with our resources, and we're gonna complement each other. We're gonna make these 21st century reconciliations. We're gonna reconcile. We're gonna close up a little bit, not to NATO, no, NATO member countries. We're gonna do an internal evaluation and do a census population. We're gonna do an economic census and an economic mass economic audit. Mass economic census. We're going to create a COA. It requires mass public-private partnership. My citizen brother, Scorpio, Bill Gates, all institutions, public-private bank, BlackRock and Blackstone are two financial institutions which merged after 1989. After 1989, they split, and now, of course, they work together in the past. And of course, that working together in the past is the concomitantly prudence, of course, of their working together. That means that it requires a mass public-private partnership of all institutions and organizations, Canada, United States, for this great work which we endeavor to be for total security, total service, total defense, and rebuilding. We're going to mass finance citizens' fitness, and also mass finance citizens building more dams here in Quebec, and mass finance also tourism. So we're going to create an Imperial tourist ministry every spring, every summer, every autumn, every winter. So 4 times on the 20th of March, 21st of June, the 22nd of September, and of course the 23rd, 21st of December. It varies by 2 days, 1 day, 2, 3 days. Sometimes they vary, but generally it's going to be established on the days, and we're going to credit all citizens and citizens who are 16 and over 4 days every year, 4 days, to be able to travel anywhere across the 10 provinces, which are going to turn states, and 3 territories are going to become states, and we're going to fuse these new super states, and across the 50, that's 50 plus 10 plus 3, that's 63. You can go, of course, from Quebec to California, from California you can go to Yukon, and anywhere you can travel. So this is going to be integrated with the Dragon Army and the security services in existing now. So regardless of status, whatever have you, every citizen is going to create a new passport, new ID integrated digitally. We're going to build massive structure for AI incorporation, and of course we're going to put a new digital DI in this new digital wallet, and we're going to also create new smartphones, Imperial smartphones, Dragon Army Imperial smartphones, and make sure our 5G networks, 3G, 4G, 5G networks are secured. And I'm going to do that internal audit with a mass public-private partnership, because Microsoft has kept on warning us for the past 2.5 years. We have had incursions even in Microsoft by foreign, Russian, Chinese hackers and actors. So we're going to have to NATO it a little bit in total SSD and take a few months to close for renovations. We're going to close it for renovations. NATO member countries, we're going to close it a little bit for renovations, We're going to close the shop a little bit, and then we're going to reopen to those who want to do business with our Imperial Democratic Republic of the 63, and we're going to be members of NATO. I guess we're going to fuse Canada and United States. That means that we're going to be no longer 32 members of NATO. We're going to be 31, and if they have a reconciliation resolution in the Middle East, Israel and Mexico can join simultaneously as the 32nd and 33rd, just by proposition, can be retaken after reconciliation and a ceasefire and a peace agreement. Maybe the Septennian Dragon Army. Septennian, of course, to have, and to resolute, of course, the Septennium in the conquer. That I've been calling for the Septennium in the Septennium, the 7 years treaty, and maybe can have Israel can reach some peace in the Middle East, and then can have the peace agreement for 7 years, and maybe Israel and Mexico, just like I had been advocating prior to October 7th, can join NATO, because we're going to have 31 member countries, no longer 32, and we're going to fuse Canada and United States, and we're going to sign the Imperial Democratic Republican Perpetual Union Protocols. Just like the Constitution, there's the Perpetual Union Articles. We're going to fundamentally have a new Constitution, and no more pledging allegiance to the King of England. It's going to be to the Novus Civis, to the Novus Civis. So to the Novus Civis, to the new citizens, of course, Novus Civis, the new citizens, the new Imperial citizens, of course, which we're going to have rules, obligations, and responsibilities. Rules, obligations, and responsibilities for the Nova Civis, of course, to do us. So that's going to be the great linguistic compromise, which we're going to have to do with the French language. And that is about the DRT, this tourism. You can take the 4 days every semester, if you will, every 4 times a year, basically every season. If you're 16 and over, the empire is going to credit, regardless of all consideration, 4 days for this imperial tourism to finance food, housing, and shelter. For once you cross midnight, 1 second past midnight, you lose one of the 4 days. So if you travel past midnight, then you're on the bus, you lose a day. So you have 3 nights left, because it's 4 nights where food, housing, and shelters are supported, right? So you can go anywhere across the 63. From Yukon, you can go to Texas. From Texas, you can come to Quebec, anywhere. Because we're going to get rid of the border. We're going to create this new ID. And we're going to mass finance tourism for the youth. Youth is going to be lovely for their mental health and their joy. And for the elderly, because all ages are going to be financed 4 days. But you can accumulate. Once you reach 44, that's the maximum. You have to use them. It's use them or lose them at one point. But you can take it you can take 8 days after 2 months. So you can after 6 months. So 4 seasons times 4, that's 4 times 4, that's 16. Or you can take 16 annually, right? Or you can take later after 2 years, you get 32. So you can accumulate. But it's recommended that you take at least 8 right, to go. You can travel and go in any state. You can go 8 days from any state to any state across the 63. That's going to be the Imperial Touristic Ministry. So that is the dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. And this is going to rejuvenate us, going to establish a strong esprit de corps within our fellow Imperial esprit de corps. And we're going to have a purpose here. The purpose is going to be total security, total service, total defense, joy, rehabilitation. And it's a great dream. It requires a lot of effort. And now I'm concerned a bit because here it's a stop sign. Do the stop. And there's a bit of security concern here. And we're going to have integrated so we can let notifications and security integration. We're going to let notice that there's a problem here, and know that problem here, that it's ongoing. So we're going to have a different manner where we're going to integrate for security, service, and defense all together in the complex where we are. Our highways, we're going to rebuild our bridges, and like I said, we're going to be closed for renovation for a few times, and then we can open up again to the world. But until we got some matters settled here in the NATO complex, North America, we're going to fuse kind of the United States. Then it's going to be kind of think of it kind of like closed for renovations, and then after we renovate and North American Collective and NATO, then we can I guess open up again and pledge your allegiance to our family. That's the dream. The dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, the empire.